recording now. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Embo, would you do a roll call?
Mr. Brown. Mr. Kuzic.
Present.
Mr. Giovanni.
Here.
Mr. Gofredo.
Here.
Mr. Heckman. Mr. Lott.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Here.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Here.
All present, Ms. Fargo Hefner by phone.
A motion to approve the minutes from the March 16th, 2023 meeting.
Motion.
Second. Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Courtesy of the floor. We have a sheet here. You will have 5 minutes. There's several people who signed up. So the first one is Mr. Don Moore.
Hello there, President Myers, Vice President Heckman, board members. It's nice to not recognize everyone and not come that often. The last time I was here, I'm sorry, Don Moore, 5610 Burhole Road, Easton.
Thank you, sir.
Plainfield Township. I'm an appointed supervisor. I'm here tonight representing myself. Last time I was here, our landfill was here, and the headlines in the paper were a tsunami of garbage is coming from New England. And I don't think we in Plainfield really should have to support that. Not only that, the DEP restricts capacity of landfills intentionally, so it doesn't have excess capacity. We really do have plenty of space to create new landfills in Pennsylvania. Mr. Cusick has proposed an amendment to the LRTA ordinance you are considering this evening. No doubt he's observed that the R in LRTA stands for revitalization. There is no need to revitalize agricultural and treed lands and steep slopes. R does not stand for ravage, which is what is proposed at the RPL site in Upper Mount Bethel Township. I began following the RPL project in about 2020 from my house in Plainfield Township as a fellow neighbor in the Sleep Belt. I attended a meeting at Upper Mount Bethel Township in which Township Engineer Justin Coyle of Carroll Engineering reported on his review of a proposed text amendment drafted by developer Pector's team. Coyle observed that in a study of several communities along the Blue Mountain, all the communities considered the uses that Pector was proposing to be special exception or conditional use. These allow consideration to be given to several aspects of a proposed development, including environmental, traffic, and potential for nuisances. Conditions may be required to protect the health, safety, welfare of the community. Coyle recommended strongly that uses for the size of the buildings Pector proposed be a conditional use. I made some comments at the meeting. As I proceeded to leave the meeting, I was verbally accosted by the township manager, who apparently was distressed that a non-resident had spoken against the proposed amendment. A few weeks later, a hearing on the amendment was held, at which hundreds of residents attended. Coyle reiterated his recommendation. An overwhelming majority of speakers spoke against the amendment, except a few, including one person who stood to gain handsomely from a sale of his property to Pector, and another who had recently joined a riding club as a non-riding member, which was rumored to be planning to sell its property, which would also be added to Pector's holdings. The board tabled the vote that evening, but held another hearing shortly thereafter, at which the amendment was passed. Here in 2023, it is believed that Pector and the pro-development board majority, whose days are numbered, are taking steps to shove Coyle, a well-respected engineer, aside as an alternate engineer. In the 2021 election, 2 of the 4 supervisors who voted for the text amendment and ran for re-election were removed by voters using write-in votes. In this year's election, the remaining 2 supervisors are not even running. The township manager is curiously running, curious because not only can a township manager not be a supervisor, but also because he doesn't stand a chance. He successfully challenged a fellow Democrat's position. How often does that happen when there's 2 seats open? But the voters will have a say in a few weeks. The indications are very clear. The voters of Upper Mount Bethel Township do not support this proposal. This is not a few so-called NIMBYs, as some officials have claimed. Don't know why I'm so nervous. Turning to this project, Pector has stated that it is a priority to bring in manufacturing. The threat has been made that the LRTA, if not extended, Upper Mount Bethel Township and the entire Sleep Belt will see more warehouses because they're cheaper to build. Perhaps Pector chose the wrong site if he can't make manufacturing development work on virgin land in which most all steep slope, impervious cover, and other protections have been drastically reduced or eliminated. Pector has proposed 5 buildings over 500,000 square feet. Of 19 buildings approved in the last 5 years in the Lehigh Valley over 500,000 square feet, 18 are warehouses and 1 is office space. That's from the LVPC. Manufacturing buildings are typically 100 to 300,000 square feet and up to 35 feet tall. The text amendment provides for buildings up to 800,000 square feet and 10 stories tall to be permitted by right. Totally contrary to Mr. Coyle's recommendation and not appropriate for manufacturing. It is my understanding that recently Pector has stated that 75% of the project is targeted for manufacturing and 25% for high cube warehouses.
You have 30 seconds.
For those unfamiliar, a high cube warehouse is a behemoth with a large footprint, tall, and relies heavily on automation. The writing is on the wall, the development will end up being warehouses. This is bad enough, but a story in the Morning Call on the 567 jobs lost by Walmart in Bethlehem is because they're laying off people and they're moving to automation to actually have less employees in warehouses. So if you have warehouses, there's going to be less jobs. According to the developer, RPL will be a Route 80 facility. Nothing could be further from the truth. Why would truckers heading west or south go east to New Jersey on Route 80 and then pay tolls immediately to go back into PA? They won't. They will drive through our slate belt communities to get to Route 33 or Route 22. Last sentence, to get to their destinations faster and cheaper. Some may be headed straight to or from the Schrin development. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
There's so many people that we have to stick to the 5-minute, please, if possible. David Dewey. Please state your name. You have 5 minutes.
Great. I have a couple maps here. Can I set them up quick?
Go ahead.
Where would be the best place to set these up?
Either side.
Your side?
You might want to put them over there so it's to the side so the folks could see them. And we could see them. That's good. We have no way of letting know they didn't see them. Yes. You want to?
We're getting there, right?
We are. Young lady said to put it over here.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, time starts now.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's David Tu from 596 Shooktown Road, Bangor. I'm a supervisor in Upper Mount Bethel Township. What I'd like to discuss this evening is there's been a lot of misinformation out there about our I-2 and I-3 zone, that it was just signed off by the supervisors that created those two areas. This map came from the COG, okay, Council of Governments of the Slate Belt. I took a copy of this in 2014. So this map shows the entire northern tier, which is the Slate Belt, and it's all the zoning in the Slate Belt. The purple areas on the map are industrial, heavy industrial. And the largest purple area is in Upper Mount Bethel Township. and that is the RPL site now, okay? The second part
That's much nicer.
this is a map from Michael Cabin and Associates, who did our comprehensive plan in 2001. He started in 1992. This map is from 2008, okay? And again, the industrial area is on the map. So there was a comment made on March 27th on a 2023, sorry, that, again, it was, the industrial area was signed off by the supervisors, which was misinforming. And I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention this evening. It exists, and it has existed. We can trace it back to 1971, the industrial area, because Metropolitan Edison wanted to put a power plant there, which would have been a nuclear power plant, and we all know what happened with 3 Mile Island, and they were the owners of that. So the Slate Belt is 10 municipalities, 2 school districts. 3 of the school districts, or 3 of the municipalities, Penargil, Wind Gap, and Plainfield, have about 12,000 people. The largest employer in that school district, as far as I know and what has been brought to me, is the landfill and the trash collection company that owns that landfill. Bangor School District is 7 municipalities with a total of 25,062 people. With that, the largest employer in that school district is the school district. So that's kind of paradoxical to me, where you have the biggest tax user supplying all the jobs, and there won't be any more movement if we don't have industry. Everyone's struggling. The fire companies, which the citizens are helping to finance, are struggling, and there's a few of those folks here this evening. So the total number of people in the Slate Belt is 37,000 people, 37,476 people, to be precise. So just wanted to bring that forward. That's larger than Easton. Easton got, what I saw on TV today, they got $40 million yesterday. So, and the Slate Belt seems to be overlooked, let's say it that way. Thank you very much for listening.
You're welcome. Our next person is Charles Cole. State your name, and you have 5 minutes, Mr. Cole.
Thank you very much. Charles Cole, Upper Mount Bethel Township, 6 Riverton Road is my address. And I am again here talking about the renewal of the LRTA. I'm not here to debate whether it's I-2 or I-3. I'm to debate the appropriation of something or misappropriation of LRTA to this site. And I'd like to direct you to the language in the state LRTA law. Act 237 in section 2 reads, should be construed to authorize local taxing authorities to exempt new construction in deteriorated areas of economically depressed communities and improvements to certain deteriorated industrial, commercial, and industrial or business property. The word improvement is repair, construction, or reconstruction, including alterations, additions, having the effect of rehabilitating a deteriorated property so that it becomes habitable or attains higher standards of safety, health, or economic use or amenity. Upper Mount Bethel Township is not described as economically depressed, nor is the I-2 industrial zone, the main part of RPL, which the LRTA was applied to wrongly. It was used by Metropolitan Edison as a buffer from the 1970s. It was industrial property, but they never considered using it for warehousing. It was buffer for a nuclear plant. In the back of that sheet that I passed out to you is an aerial view of it. And you will see it's predominantly farms and ravines and open space and the proverbial Tweety birds and wetlands. When people state that the development of this property as proposed will bring great benefits of jobs and taxes, they are deliberately ignoring the negative impacts of the development. Many of the people standing up here and speaking, I'm sort of going off script right now, are business people, and they should know better. They're ignoring the positive that they claim with jobs and taxes against the negative impacts of this development. They aren't using something called whole cost accounting or cost benefit when they look at it. They deliberately ignore the costs. And the costs are things such as reduction in property value, health impacts, loss of environmental diversity, water recharge, cost of managing the property, and impacts. RPL build-out is seen to have 15 buildings, 7.4 million square foot of footprint. 9 of these buildings are over 500,000 square foot, and you already heard that buildings greater than 500,000 have probably 95% chance of being a warehouse. Means half of what probably is going to go in there is going to be a warehouse. And if you look at the first building, 303 Demi, that has been on the books for a while, it's less than 500,000, but it's built as a warehouse, and the sewage disposal is for only a couple dozen people, which indicates it's going to be a warehouse. So we're going to be ending up with warehouses. So in conclusion, I say, why should the county violate the purpose of LRTA and the law and degrade our community? Do not renew this LRTA as it's in its present form.
30 seconds.
Do you have any questions in my 30 seconds? Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Mr. Kyle Dutt. Speak your name. You have 5 minutes.
Kyle Dutt, 352 Five Points Richmond Road, Upper Mount Bethel Township. Thank you for letting me speak on this LRTA issue tonight. I've been a resident of Upper Mount Bethel Township for 36 years, and my ancestors first settled there over 200 years ago. I am asking you, please do not renew this LRTA. The application of LRTA to this property is a violation of the Act, clearly. The Act is clear in its intent and application. It is not subjective or needing any legal interpretation or clarification. The Act concretely and specifically states, this act shall be construed to authorize local taxing authorities to exempt new construction in deteriorated areas of economically depressed communities. Key points: deteriorated property and economically depressed community. Fact: the property is not deteriorated, and Upper Mount Bethel Township is not an economically depressed community. Fact: the RPL property described in the LERTA is a natural area consisting of farm fields, meadows, woodlands, and bogs. Notably, endangered and threatened species such as a bog turtle inhabit parts of the property. Fact: Upper Mount Bethel Township is not an economically depressed community. Farms have continued to be a viable resource for the township and is a major reason for the lower taxes because farmland and open space does not require the services as other development. In addition to farmland, many small businesses are entering the township. The local villages and surrounding areas, including wineries, eateries, farm markets, and other forms of sustainable community-based development. Upper Mount Bethel Township residents have resoundingly shown their opposition to the project and for the LERTA renewal. However, their voices land on deaf ears in the township, as a majority of township quote-unquote leaders have for years, since the inception of the proposed plan, have thumbed their noses at the residents, ignoring their duty to represent the people and secure their health, safety, and welfare, and instead acting as representatives of the special interest. So much so that one of the supervisors stated lately he will ram everything through for the project until his term expires. We deserve better than this. It's a sad and sorry fact that the BASD and township had twisted the LERTA and approved LERTAs for RPL. I would ask that the commissioners, especially those representing or residing in the region, do in fact represent the people of Upper Mount Bethel Township and not support the LERTA renewal. A recent article maintained one commissioner spoke in favor of LERTA and another said the area needs an economic boost. How is this boost determined? And what cost? And what types? And development undesirable to residents and aided by the wrongful use of the LERTA. If Upper Mount Bethel Township should need economic development, shouldn't the type of development be suited to the rural character of the township, which has always been residents have always asked to maintain the rural character of the township, and not development contrary to these and yet helped along by the purposeful misuse and violation of an act designed for other purposes. The development using statistics of size by LVPC, text amendment material, and conceptual drawing suggest primarily warehouses. This would bring negative impacts to the township, including traffic, pollution of air, water, and land, water supply problems, and numerous health issues. Therefore, I ask you to do the right thing and deny the LERTA renewal, which violates the law and aids a project unsuitable and destructive to the township, ruining a rural character which residents have always sought to maintain. Thank you.
Rich Valone, did I say that correctly?
Yes. Good evening, Rich Valone on behalf of Lamtech and Custom Laminating Corporation, 5000 and 5010 River Road in Upper Mount Bethel. We are direct neighbors. What's that?
With the mic. There you
Oh,
go.
sorry. Is that better?
Yep.
We're direct neighbors to this project, and my understanding is the LERTA is an overlay on our existing property, although we moved to town before the LERTA was enacted, so we have not able to benefit from that. Our companies are neighbors. We're 400,000 plus square feet on 2 buildings, employing approximately 250 individuals, as many as possible from the local area We're hiring. Okay. With that said, my understanding is this is really a legal matter, but I can tell you that as a manufacturing operation in the township, we have injected over $500,000 back into the Slate Belt through community grants and our private foundation, including several $100,000 directly to Upper Mount Bethel for their park, community park. So, you know, I can tell you on our behalf, we're manufacturers, we're happy residents of Upper Mount Bethel, but we could use an increase in local services like ambulance. The fire department has been wonderful to us. Thank God we've not needed their services. But on occasion, we have needed ambulance service, and the response times are up to 30 minutes. We had an employee die on his way into work in the parking lot because he had a heart attack. So, you know, these types of things are really helpful to people who live and reside in the community. And I'll leave the legal matters and the LRTA and that for others. But what I'm here to say is it is important that Upper Mount Bethel continues to grow. We are happy to be there, but a lot of the things we expected to occur, like emergency services improvements, did not occur in the 10 or 12 years that we've been around town. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Finan?
Members of the County Council, thank you for letting me speak with you tonight. My name is Christopher Finan, resident of Upper Mount Bethel from 7 Apache Drive. I also serve as the fire chief for Mount Bethel Fire Company. I wanted to tell you tonight and speak to you about the LRTA of Upper Mount Bethel Township and tell you I am in favor of the LRTA. I would like you guys to renew it. The LRTA was put into place to attract businesses to the existing industrial zone. I feel that if the LRTA is discontinued, no matter who the developer is, the only thing that will be built in Upper Mount Bethel Township on this property is warehousing, and no manufacturers will want to come to Upper Mount Bethel. They'll go to other places that have the LRTA benefits. Like I said, I do not want warehouses built in Upper Mount Bethel. I want manufacturers that care about our community and want to be involved, like Lam Tech, Custom Laminate, Air Liquide. Personally, I feel if you take away the LRTA, it will take any chance of Upper Mount Bethel seeing any other reputable manufacturing businesses come to our community and helping the community, helping the fire companies, the township, the park, whoever it may be. And this is all my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Cole? State your name, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay. Dan Cole, 1091 Fox Gap, Upper Mount Bethel Township. Good evening, members of the Northampton County Council. My name is Dan Cole, and I am the Assistant Chief at the North Bangor Fire Company. I would like to take this opportunity to talk to you about an ongoing issue we are facing and how the development of River Point Commerce Park would benefit the department and our residents. As you all know, emergency services are critical to our community. Whether it's a fire or medical emergency, the county relies on our services in time of need. However, as a volunteer fire department with limited funding, we struggle to provide the best possible services to community members and have to rely on the municipality for support. Today, I'm here to support the development of River Point Commerce Park. You may be asking how an industrial park can help resolve some of the challenges we face as a fire company. Simply put, through its Neighborhood Improvement District, or NID, we'll receive the necessary funding to purchase and replace critical life safety equipment that will allow us to better serve the community. The problem is that we won't see any of these dollars until this project gets off the ground and it continues to be delayed. Through the NID, the developer is responsible for financially addressing the impacts the industrial park will have on the community, including road, infrastructure, security, and of course, fire and life safety. The NID's budget allocates $150,000 per year for stabilizing the township's ability to provide fire and life safety measures, as well as conducting additional training for emergency personnel. This is $50,000 more than we currently receive. The benefits of the NID also extend beyond increased funds for emergency services. The proposed NID budget allocates $100,000 annually for the township's park, recreation, and culture. These fees will nearly double the township's budget, allowing for new community activities without increasing property taxes. Like it or not, the township needs this project. The North Bangor Fire Company and I urge everyone in this room tonight who value access to life-saving emergency services to support the LRTA so River Point Commerce can attract manufacturers and get this development off the ground as soon as possible. Remember, no development, no revenue for our township. Thank you.
Thank you. Martin Pinter? Say your name, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you, President Myers. My name's Martin Pinner, 39 Lindsay Lane, Mount Bethel, PA. Good evening, members of Northampton County Council. My name is Martin Pinner, and I'm the chairman of the Board of Supervisors in Upper Mount Bethel Township. I'm also the treasurer for the township as well. I'm here to strongly advocate for the tax break known as LRTA and its role in supporting River Point Commerce Park, a project that's vital to the growth and development of Upper Mount Bethel Township and the entire Northampton County community. Before I speak on the benefits of the development, I'd like to address the false information that was recently shared on WFMZ's Business Matters show. It was stated 2% of the land that is owned by River Point Logistics was recently rezoned from agricultural to industrial. That is incorrect. The land has been zoned industrial back to the 1970s. What a recent text amendment did was increase the allowable height of the building in the township's industrial zoning districts from 50 feet to 100 feet and increase the allowable building footprint from 300,000 square feet to 800,000 square feet, or up to 1 million square feet by conditional use. When people, especially county representatives, listen to the wrong people, they contribute to the spread of misinformation, and the libel and fear-mongering must stop. This is why I'm here today. I share the facts about this project. Yes, River Point Commerce Park will change Upper Mount Bethel Township, but will also bring the slate belt into the 21st century. The slate belt has a rich history of manufacturing, which includes history-making slate quarries and world-renowned blouse mills. River Point Commerce Park will carry on this legacy by bringing new manufacturing opportunities to our region. Moreover, the developer of River Point Commerce Park will provide much-needed financial resources for our local economy and create opportunities for new and future residents. According to the latest census results, Upper Mount Bethel Township is experiencing a decline in population growth. From April 2010 to July 2021, nearly 300 residents have left our township, resulting in lost tax dollars. There is much needed tax dollars as there's an 84-16 disparity between tax exempt and tax reduced assessed land versus residential assessed land. The LRTA will enable us to create a more equitable environment for our residents. Additionally, we need better employment opportunities. The average household income for residents in the Slate Belt is nearly $20,000 less than it is in the greater Lehigh Valley. It makes sense that 35% of the Bangor area school district are on free and reduced lunches, and only 17% are in Nazareth. Our struggling local economy is putting a strain on families in all aspects. River Point Commerce Park aims to bring jobs and investment to our area, and it is our responsibility as board members to provide those opportunities to our community's residents. Currently, The average Upper Mount Bethel resident commutes 40 minutes to and from work, with many locals traveling closer to an hour and a half of each way. I happen to be one of those residents. This is not an ideal situation, but it is necessarily due to the lack of nearby employment opportunities. We need to bring good-paying jobs and set those families up for success. While this project will move forward with or without LRTA, LRTA will significantly impact the project's ability to attract the type of manufacturing tenants Upper Mount Bethel Township needs and deserves. I urge you to consider the latest data from the Lehigh Valley Census, which shows that Upper Mount Bethel Township and Northampton County are falling behind in terms of population growth and economic development. We cannot afford to ignore this critical issue any longer. River Point Commerce Park is an opportunity to boost our local economy and create jobs. It will also attract new residents to our community. Let's work together and support this vital project. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Fred Clark.
Hi, Fred Clark from Upper Mount Bethel Township. I've never done this before, so please bear with me. First, just an opening comment. It's my understanding that this meeting is about whether the LRTA applies to River Point, not whether or not River Point is a good or bad project. So I'm not going to speak to whether or not River Point is a good or bad project. I'm here to speak about whether or not LRTA applies to River Point. So I'm going to read a letter I've written. Northampton County River Point Logistics LRTA Review, Renewal, and Action. First, I'm not a lawyer, so the following is presented by a layman, in layman's terms, sourced from publicly available information, believed to be accurate. On December 11th, the Upper Mount Bethel Board of Supervisors approved Ordinance 2017-04, asserting that a property now under development as River Point Logistics Park containing land zone is I-2 and I-3, and a second property zoned I-1 at approximate junctions of Route 611, Allegheny Road, and Evergreen, even though that land contains agricultural property in the Northampton County property records, were qualified for local economic tax assistance law, LRTA, treatment, as they fit the criteria to be designated as part of certain deteriorated areas of industrial, commercial, and other business property. It's important to note that the ordinance is silent on what specific characteristics constitute the deterioration of the fields used for agriculture or the undeveloped woodlands of the RPL property, the Zone I-2 property, which accounts for about 75% of that land. It is also silent on what specific characteristics make Upper Mount Bethel an economically depressed community. Since I did not live in Upper Mount Bethel at the time, I'm unaware whether these definitions were ever supported by the Board of Supervisors at the public meeting on the ordinance or discussed when the Northampton County Council reviewed and approved the related Ordinance 633 on April 15, 2018. A cursory read of the LRTA law makes it seem that it might be applied for mitigating the economic impact of deteriorated properties like the former Portland Generating Station, specifically the section of RPL Zone I-3, and appropriately applied to the distribution warehouse building in the I-1 zoned area at the junctions of 611 Allegheny Road and Evergreen. Remediating these clearly industrial properties to make them more productive and attractive again could benefit Upper Mount Bethel, depending on what businesses came in. The original LRTA approval seems to have been predicated on the blight and deterioration of Upper Mount Bethel properties, which was then extended to farm and woodlands, which is a leap of logic I challenge. Section 4 of the LRTA law, deteriorated areas, refers to two laws that provide the guidance as to the criteria for setting the boundaries of such areas. Urban Redevelopment Law, PL 991, number 385, and the Neighborhood Assistance Act, PL 636, number 222. These laws were targeted for urban areas or areas of excessive unemployment, which Upper Mount Bethel is not, to the best of my knowledge. Before the council votes on the extension of LRTA, I would like to hear the specific criteria from these laws that were used and the facts that were used to support their use. So, just to conclude, this is not about whether RPL is good or bad. This is about whether or not LRTA applies to the entire RPL property, all right? And I will tell you that Portland generating plant is an eyesore. So if Mr. Pector wants to take that down and put something nice in, great. The warehouse at the end of my road, it's not great looking, all right? Those are clearly industrial properties. Those are clearly what the LRTA law was written for. But to extend the LRTA law to farm fields, well, then why don't you just declare all of Northampton County a LRTA area, because we're
30 seconds.
almost all farm fields. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Francis Viscaro? Did I say that correctly? Okay, I didn't butcher it.
No, you didn't. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Frances Viscaro. I live at 3001 North Delaware Drive, Mount Bethel. I'm here this evening to ask the council to vote no on extending the LRTA. The development is huge. The traffic that it will produce will have an impact on our roads. Our road department works hard to keep our roads fixed up. With more trucks and cars on our roads, we will see our roads deteriorate faster. Who will pay for the roads to be repaired? The citizens. Another is our supervisors wanted to create a designated area to our town to hook up sewer system the developer is building. The town drip irrigation will be in our park. Do the citizens of our town want our children playing near a drip irrigation? The local economic revitalization tax definition for deterioration property is any industrial, commercial, or other business property owned by individual, association, corporation, and located in a deteriorating area as herewithin provided, or any such property which has been the subject of an order by the government's agency requiring the unit to be vacated, condemned, or deteriorated by reason of noncompliance with the law, ordinance, or regulation. This land the LRTA is woodlands and farm fields. I don't see the property as deterioration. What does the corporation or industry why does the corporation and industry get relief from taxes? But the citizens don't even have the option of a LRTA tax relief so that they could improve their property. Let the industry park pay fair share in taxes, like every citizen in our township. Last, I want to say the township will see more traffic along with congestion and many more accidents, loss of farm fields and beautiful forests, and we'll have more air pollution, quality of life will be affected, loss of value of our home could decrease up to 30% less than the value it is now. Why should citizens of Upper Mount Bethel have a negative impact on their lives? Please do not vote LRTA. And a few things I want to say, that the Board of Supervisors approved 4 new trucks for our town at the last board meeting and told us they have the money for the 4 trucks. And they gave the COVID grant money to help our fire department to buy their fire trucks. Thank you for listening to me.
Sharon, I can't read your last name.
It's Duffield. I'm from Mount Bethel.
Okay, thank you.
I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but here I am. I'm here to ask you not to renew the LRTA. Many folks have already talked to you about the area and about, does LRTA apply, does LRTA not apply? Those of you who are from the Slate Belt area, and it's several of you, know that area. It is not depressed. The property is not run down, with the exception of the power plant, which the other gentleman spoke about. And what is the intent of LRTA? What is the intent of the abatement? Normally, LRTA is used for rundown buildings, areas that are already constructed that need to be built back up. That land, which I'm sure you all know, is farmed right now, it's forest right now, with the exception of the power plant. The emergency services people who need the support and state they need the support, I can understand what they're saying, but I also understand that when the development comes in, that's going to be needed, LRTA or no LRTA, and there will be even more to do. There will be more traffic, there will be more accidents, there will be more buildings to take care of. And everything, frankly, folks, is not about dollars and cents. When we're talking about the area needs expansion, the area needs development, the area needs growth, people are going down in population. People are leaving, yes. People on my street are selling their homes and they're getting out. And they're getting out because of this. That now a tax break is needed for. Lamtech, Air Liquide, they didn't have a LRTA. They're there. They're hiring. They are hiring. Everybody was hiring the last 2 years. There aren't enough people. This is not just about jobs. Those 4,000 jobs, Mr. Pector himself has stated a lot of those are going to have to come from New Jersey. We all know that. People who live there are used to commuting. People who live there because of the rural character. We don't need a LRTA to bring that in. You want to bring businesses in, bring good quality businesses in. That will be wonderful. The footprints of those buildings, the gentleman from Lamtech said what, 2 buildings, 400,000 square feet? Some of these can be 800,000. Those of you who are contractors and in buildings, you know what that footprint size is. Beverage processors. 10-story buildings, that's refrigerated warehousing. That's why they need the height. A lot of that is automated. A lot of that is trucks. Those beverage processors, that stuff's going right into that refrigerated warehousing, and then it's going onto trucks. That infrastructure is going to be there for a long, long time. And it will have to be supported for a long, long time. It's going to have to be built. And eventually, that's going to have to be maintained. LRTA is meant for areas that are depressed. Typically, it's in towns, it's in cities. Mr. Teal and others, Ed, have talked about the garment industry. I'm well aware. I worked in those blouse mills. My husband worked for Blue Ridge Winkler. My father worked for CNA. We all know what the town was like then, and that was a different time. Most people had one car, they work locally. Now people work remotely, a whole lot of them. As for kids staying in the area, the kids are going to go where they want to go for their career. And it ain't always going to be to work in a manufacturing plant. So please think about the people who live there. Think about us. This is our home too. I've lived there my whole life.
30 seconds.
People live there because of the rural character. It is not depressed economically or physically. Thank you for your time.
Can you just state your name again?
Sure, Sharon, last name's Duffield, Duffield.
Thank you.
Anthony DeFranco? Good evening. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but as I was taking some notes, I saw everybody else signing up. I figured I would too. My name's Anthony DeFranco. I'm a former supervisor up in Mount Bethel Township, former road master for the road crew, and also I'm on the co-chairman or vice chairman of the Parks and Recreation Board and vice chairman of the Economic Development Committee. First of all, does everybody, the council, I would like to ask you, do you all realize that you know what the property is all about? Have you looked at the history of the property? Does everybody kind of have a good idea? You're shaking your head, yes? Well, I think you're full of baloney.
Okay.
I saw you on WFMZ last week misquote two things that I almost jumped through the TV.
Okay.
The property was not zoned industrial through a text amendment.
No, it wasn't.
No, that's what
But
you
it was
stated.
changed.
That's what you stated. And that show goes out to 2.7 million homes. And you also said it was done through the developer's attorney. Okay.
Not?
And it was combined.
Address the chair. We're not
sorry.
directing
But it was
my council member to direct.
But it was combined with our solicitor and our former chairman of the board, John Birmingham, who stated a couple of different times on Facebook and some interviews that he does, that he spent between 500 and 600 hours working with the attorneys to do this, and he's an attorney himself. So those are big misquotes. So either you're not informed or you were lying, or one or the other. So I'm just saying.
Address the chair, please, sir.
I'm just saying either that or she was lying. So I took some.
We don't attack people.
I took some notes tonight. Somebody mentioned tonight that farmland doesn't cost as much to take care of as a residential area, which is false, because I was the roadmaster. We have 114 miles of road in Mount Bethel. It costs just as much to maintain the roads in front of a farm as it does in front of a house. And that is a lot longer roads. Some of those farms have 1.5 miles of road, and some houses only have a couple hundred feet. So it takes a lot more to maintain those roads than they think. Okay. We still have to maintain them. We have to plow them. And we have to repave them every 10, 11 years, which we're only tar and chipping. So we're way behind in our maintaining of the roads. Let's see. So you have that one. And my wife is the tax collector in our township. We just had a 2 mil increase. In our estimation, it's probably going to be another 6 mils within 4 years if this development doesn't come through. I've seen people in her office crying, pulling out change purses, trying to pay taxes and garbage bills, which just went up over twice. All right. Years ago, about 20 years ago, this same property was going to go through a residential development. People were up in arms saying, "You're going to take away our industrial land. That's crazy. Why would you do that when it's zoned industrial? We need industry in there." Some of those same people are in here tonight claiming they don't want the industry now. So that's a bunch. The drip irrigation is not going in the park. The drip irrigation has nothing to do with the park at this point. And they talk about property values going down. How about Tatamy? Tatamy's houses are 2.5 times as much as they were before the Shrin development went in. And with things going on in China, we have to bring manufacturing back to the United States. It's that simple. I mean, and it's obvious. You listen to the news, everything's coming out of China. All China has to do is poison some stuff and send it our way, and we're dead. So let's start manufacturing here in the United States. And also, last but not least, 5 years ago, you guys approved the LRTA. So what changed in 5 years? It's the same property, except it's getting older. So nothing's changed in 5 years. So I would suggest I would like to see you guys pass the LRTA.
30 seconds.
That's it. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Before we go any further, folks, I want to be respectful. No, we're going to be respectful. Everybody, please. We're going to hold this thing and we're going to help do it correctly. Everyone speaks, has a right to speak. I don't want, I for the life of me, don't want to have the situation. Does not need to get out of control. Everyone has a right to speak, and they will speak, and you will respect their opinion as well as yours. So at this point, we will continue. Let's be respectful, folks, please. Everybody. David Friedman.
David
Ma'am,
Friedman.
you cannot come back up.
Sir, you need to know the word "FU" was used from one gentleman to another. So please get things under control.
He's trying. We heard it. Good job.
We are going to be respectful, please, folks, with everybody. And if we can't, be respectful of each other. Okay? We have a sheriff here, and he will keep everything under control. All right? With that said, we're going to move on to Mr. Friedman, I'm sorry, sir.
No, Friedman. Dave Friedman, 367 Gapview Lane, Mount Bethel, PA. I'm also a supervisor, and I'm here tonight speaking on my own behalf. As far as Ms. Zirinsky knowing what's going on, I gave her a personal tour of the property. Let's straighten that out. Also, about farmland being detrimental to the community, I have a list here from the Farmland Preservation from this county of the benefits of farms. I have yet to see a list citing the benefits of warehouses. Most what I wanted to say has been said tonight. I think we all agree, we all want manufacturing and industry for Upper Mount Bethel Township and no warehouses. I think that fact has been established. So, Mr. Kusak's amendment to perhaps make the power plant property, LURDA, and the I-2, which is mostly farmland, not LURDA, makes sense to me. But can this council make stipulations that LURDA will not be applied to warehouses? I don't know if you can or not. One gentleman shaking his head, another one isn't. That seems to be the crux of the matter in this whole issue. Warehouses, manufacturing industry. I don't know if there's stipulation, but we're at each other's throats. The developer says he doesn't want warehouses, but sadly, the statistics are against it. It's been cited. I don't know of any manufacturing in Lehigh or Northampton County that's 500,000 square feet. They're not making 4747s in Northampton or Lehigh County. The steel's gone. Ingersoll Rand is gone. Portland has a viable industrial park. All of those buildings up there are under 300,000 square feet. So I don't know what we can do about this, but everybody's just shaking their heads about. I'm in a quandary here. As a supervisor, I have to look at our tax base for our citizens. I also have to look out for their way of life. Warehouses are not the way to go. I don't know any way to try to keep a warehouse of Mount Bethel Township. And like I said, I'm sorry, I might have been a little incoherent or all over the place tonight, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Judith Hinkle?
Good evening. Judith Henkel. I'm 1752 Robin Hood Road in Upper Mount Bethel. Yeah, I guess by now you get the idea of how divided our community is. And generally, we can speak together respectfully, but it's like we're on two ends of the coin. I'm going to keep this short because so much of what I had prepared has already been said. And so what I came here for was to ask a no vote on the Upper Mount Bethel LURTA as it currently stands. So the majority of the RPL Old Electric Company property is farmed and forest. That's a fact. That's a land use. And if you look at all the Lehigh Valley Municipality planning maps that we've been looking at for 3 years in our regionalization of the planned slate belt, that's land use. It's farmed and it's woodland. And so the zoning is what people decide they want it to be. And I've been at meetings for a long time. Somebody will come in at the last minute and want their little part changed. Now, granted, as has been said, that property was owned by the electric company for all these years, and it was their buffer zone. And so they left it farmed, they left it wooded. Like I said once before, they didn't even dump their fly ash on it. So getting past that, I want to go on a little bit higher level and say our community that land's not deteriorated and our community is not economically depressed. If you look at the Slate Belt region, we're a little above average on income and everything else, and also on the age of our citizens. I think we all are. So our community has many non-monetary assets of national and regional value. National Park Service administers both the Appalachian National Scenic Trail, the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area, and the Lower Delaware Wild and Scenic River. The county, and the state are involved with our Lake Mincy, Lake Mincy and Bear Swamp Corridor, which goes up to the Kittatinny Ridge. We have the largest areas of vernal pools in Pennsylvania. We also have one of the highest priority habitats, the Mount Bethel Fens. The Med Electric Company in its own is listed on significant habitat maps as the first osprey reintroduction project, which was done 45 years ago. The population had built up in all that time until about a year or two ago. There were at least 4 nesting pairs on the property. They're no longer there. And there were also eagles using the area. So with all this going back and forth, I want to say that's what people in our township look at. That's our identity. That's who we are, all those natural areas. And I think that looking at all the things I've been involved with the county, with your landscapes and this, that, and the other thing, and all your plans and planning, you appreciate that too, or you wouldn't have been spending so much money on the Mincy corridor and a plan for improving that. So what I want to say is most of us in the community want to maintain our rural community character with a sustainable kind of economic development. We're not saying no. We're just saying make it something we can live with. Like Mr. Malone, I looked at, there's like 5 buildings down along River Road that are 80 to 300 square foot. And that's along River Road and the Portland Industrial Park. We have that. We don't see them very much. They don't have a lot of traffic. I don't know how much light they throw in the sky at night, air pollution and whatever. This is going to be totally different. If you go along with the LRTA and say that this land that's farmland or whatever needs to be remedied, I don't know that the taxpayers of Northampton County, or even our township and our school, for that matter, I don't know that we should help with that tax incentive for urban scale development on a 300-foot slope leading down to the river, and that could change. In these financial times, I think this is a huge gamble. I think we're getting a lot of promises.
30 seconds.
I understand the people that came here already have been told that, wow, this is going to be great, but you got to know every time there's growth, there's an increased cost. And so I'll end up by saying, I don't see this as being environmentally responsible or even economically sound. And we, the people, will be left to pick up the pieces. We could and should be doing better. Just going to leave with, I remembered tonight, if any of you remember the O.J. Simpson trial, God, it was on TV forever. And he kept saying, if the glove doesn't fit,
Time.
you can't admit, this doesn't fit.
Got it. Okay, let's go.
Scott Cole.
Oh, more? Geez, I'm running out of paper.
Scott Cole, 90 Hillside Court, Mount Bethel, PA. Good evening, members of council. I'm Scott Cole. I'm the chairman of the Economic Development Committee in Mount Bethel. I came here before council in late 2017, and at that time I presented the overview of the UMBT LRTA program and the proposal that we had on the table at the time for our I-1, I-2, and I-3 industrial zones with the intention of having county also pass a similar ordinance, which you did unanimously at the end of 2017. At that time, the Board of Supervisors of Mount Bethel, along with the Economic Development Committee, proposed enacting the LRTA because the Slate Belt area had a vital need for well-paying jobs and new diversified sources of tax revenue, not just for the township, but also for the school district. Fast forward to 2023, well, there's been a lot of development pre-work activity at the UMBT LRTA locations in anticipation of upcoming development. However, the need for well-paying jobs and new sources of tax revenue is even greater now than it was in 2017. The extension of the LRTA is vital for Upper Mount Bethel Township to continue to grow its job and its tax base. Just recently, I believe one of the other supervisors mentioned the township enacted a tax increase of approximately 30%, 30, on property taxes just to be able to meet our current operating needs. The expectation is in the future, we're going to need at least twice as much as that. In addition to that, we also recently had to purchase new road crew vehicles, which we had to reach into our capital reserve account to be able to fund for. Not only is our township in dire need of new financial resources, our school district and the volunteer fire departments, which are already presented here this evening, they continue to struggle to find ways to make ends meet without having to request more tax increases. Without development, the tax burden in our township is going to continue to squeeze senior citizens, anyone else on fixed income, and at some point, it's going to start pricing out already existing struggling families from the region. That is a fact. That's not based on economic forecast, that is a fact. We are going to start pricing people out of our area to be able to live there because of the constant tax needs. We fully understand, the Economic Development Committee fully understands that there are concerns around more traffic on our commercial roads and the potential changes to our rural community that development will bring. Land-wise, Mount Bethel is approximately 44 square miles, of which this LRTA area comprises roughly about 800 acres. That's less than 3% of our land mass in total. 84% of the rest of our land is already protected under various governmental or open space and farmland preservation acts, rightfully so, because we all desire, myself included, to live in a rural community. What does that mean, having that much acreage? Mount Bethel is always going to have preserved farms and open space. 84% of it is already in some form of protected status. The developer is already on record as stating that without LRTA incentives, there's a very good chance that the RPL development will reposition itself from industrial, which is what everyone wants, to warehouse and distribution development, which every single person I've heard up here and every single person I've heard in the township say, nobody wants that in the township, including the Economic Development Committee. Industry and manufacturing jobs bring better paying jobs generally. They usually have better tax rateable bases for the buildings, and they bring less truck traffic, which is everyone is asking for. On behalf of the Economic Development Committee, I would ask that you approve the extension of the LRTA ordinance this evening so that we can finally have better paying jobs in the township. We can have more tax revenue and continue to preserve the township for future generations. Thank you, members of council, for your time this evening.
Is there anybody else wants to speak on the courtesy of the floor? Please come up and. I have 2 people so far. 3, okay. Name?
David LaFura. I'm here on behalf of Ultra Poly Corporation, 102 Demi Road in Portland. So we currently occupy 2 buildings in Portland, in the Portland Industrial Park. We are a neighbor of RPL. And we do believe that our 3rd building, which we're considering developing now, might fall inside of the LRTA district in question here. So I'm here to support the continuation of the policy. So for those of you who don't know us, we are a manufacturer. We recycle plastic and we produce pellets or resin, which is purchased by a wide range of manufacturers across the country who use it to make a range of goods, from can liners to plastic lumber to household goods and drainage pipe. We've been headquartered in Portland since 1997, and we've had a great track record there. We're currently one of the largest plastics recyclers in the country, and we employ over 200 people across 5 plants in Pennsylvania. We're in the early stages of developing a third building in this LERTA zone. We're developing it for our own use. The building will be in the Portland Industrial Park. However, it will reside technically in Upper Mount Bethel. So the status of this LERTA property will have a massive impact on our ability to successfully develop this site, which will in turn impact the community. So we calculate that over the life of the LERTA, it would save us over $1 million, about $1.1 million in taxes over 10 years. And importantly, that generates it improves our ability to invest in the equipment. That 1.1 million equals roughly the cost of one production line, which when installed would employ 8 additional people full-time, and it would go to support the 220 additional jobs we currently have in Pennsylvania. It would increase our capacity by about 10%, and it would also improve our debt capacity, which would allow us, it would provide us with better chances of getting this project financed. So it is important for us. Over the long run, we would anticipate this new building to generate between 50 and 60 jobs for the community. So our hope is to begin construction on this building sometime in 2024, and there's no question that the continuation of this LERTA would help us improve our chances of doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, I believe you're next, and then I got a person over there and somebody in the back. Some of this we are going to address public when we get to the actual ordinance. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Name?
Hi, Samantha Burns. I'm a Lower Mount Bethel Township Supervisor. I was here your last meeting and I spoke on behalf of the whole board. And we do have the blessing to speak again, but I'm going to talk about just something I thought of. Okay, what I've learned during my term as supervisor is this. There are times when we are tasked with making decisions for our constituents that will affect their daily lives. Sometimes they may be as trivial as picking the color of our new garbage cans, or when we schedule events like a Christmas tree lighting. In those situations, basing our decisions and opinions, basing our decisions on our opinions and hold on, I'm having a little tongue problem. By basing our decisions on our opinions or personal preferences is reasonable. Now, there are the issues that are critical, permanent, and life-changing. In these cases, our opinions are irrelevant and should not be taken into consideration. This is one of those instances. Our obligations, first and foremost, should be to focus on how we could lessen the tax burden for our citizens, and not to grant tax relief for corporations, including developers. Our duty is to make decisions in the best interest of our constituents, listening to what they want and need, considering and basing our determinations by voting for what will benefit the majority of the people. Renewing the LERTA for River Point Logistics is one of those decisions. This act, I'm going to be redundant, this act shall be construed to authorize local taxing authorities to exempt new construction in deteriorated areas of economically depressed communities. An improvement, I'll skip over that. This act is very specific and simple. RPL does not qualify. This is not my opinion. This is a fact. Just because someone wants something does not mean they automatically should receive it. I always told my kids, if you don't ask, you won't get. But just because you ask doesn't mean you're going to get. Thank you.
You're welcome. This gentleman behind the pole said he would be next. He's hiding behind the pole, so I'll let him slide over. State your name and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. Michael Gaffredo, Kennedy Drive, Rosetto, Pennsylvania. I am here unscripted. Since my first day as an elected official in 1980 and through currently my 16th year on the Bangor Area School Board, currently the president of the board. We've seen so many things change in the Slate Belt in our school district that have been so difficult to find any opportunity to correct. We lost our blouse mills. We lost our textile industries. We are a shell of what we once were economically from a commercial and industrial side. Today, I'm speaking about the school district as a member, but as my own thoughts, not that of the board. I do know that our current budget of about $62 million, less the amounts that are funded through the Commonwealth and the federal government, approximately 60% of that budget, it comes from our local residents and commercial businesses. But the residents, the primary residents of our school district today, at our last budget, pay 75% of that burden. 11% comes from commercial and industrial properties. 10% comes from farms. And 4% of our income base from taxation comes from what was power. What is now, after all of the appeals here at the county level for revenue adjustments have been significantly reduced, including a portion of the power plant that falls in the school district in Lower Mount Bethel Township. So, however the LRTA program applies, in 2017, our board supported the LRTA program unanimously. I believe the supervisors did also. And just a note that this LRTA program came to be well before there ever was a developer. It was moved forward by the township, the local industrial development authority, and it was believed to be the perfect opportunity to bring investment activity into the district. That's about to mature. We're hoping certainly that it is industry and not warehouse. So however the LRTA program is continued, we're hoping that you'll give it a chance to go. If not, we really need to find a way. This is, we in our school district, now I'm not talking about the slate belt anymore. We don't make slate. We don't make blouses. And we don't make any textiles. But in the slate belt, things have changed. We can't go back into the boroughs of Bangor, Rosetto, East Bangor, and there's very little in Washington Township. There's very little opportunity. Here we are on this rather unique portion of Upper Mount Bethel Township, and I am sensitive to all the comments of the residents, and certainly don't want to see anything that is not great for the area. But here we have an area with the immediate opportunity, a traffic corridor on Route 80. We have rail sidings. We don't have that anywhere else in our school district. So I would only, without knowing the full consequences, ask all of you to consider supporting the LRTA program and let it work itself out in time. Thank you very much.
This gentleman here, and then I'll go to that side of the room. Mr. Pechter, is that you?
Thank you very much for being able to approach the board. I don't have a canned speech, but I want to react to some of the comments that were made tonight because I think some have cleared up discrepancies and misstatements. I know Ms. Zirinsky's misstatement on public TV was pretty detrimental to the image of this project by saying that this was agricultural land rezoned by us, and it's, clearly that was cleared up tonight. There are other misnomers about high cube, high warehouses and robotics going everywhere in here. That's not the case. When I stand up here and say this is a very important vote, it is a very important vote, not just for Upper Mount Bethel, but the citizens of the Bangor School District. The impact of this vote will have an impact that will carry on for a long period of time relative to tax increases. The 2 mil tax increase that was heavily discussed and realized in Upper Mount Bethel is just a precursor to what can happen if good development and good economic management doesn't happen. That's been in motion now. We've taken a long time to put a plan in place that makes sense for this piece of property. The amount of square footage in this property will be the same whether we put small boxes that were here with the zoning that was in place before we did a text amendment. It'll be a different outcome, totally different outcome than the plan that we have. I sit here on the record saying that the people we've talked to are manufacturing driven. Categorically, they're food companies, they're flavor and fragrance companies. They're advanced recycling manufacturing, much like Ultra Poly, much like Lamtech. Lamtech themselves, and I'm free to say in front of Rich, is one of the potential users for the land that we're developing. That's the type of use we want. It's not because we're the greatest guys in the world, it's because we make the most money on value-add development. I can easily do generic development on this property. I don't need the infrastructure, I don't need alert, I don't need anything to just put up a box and do 5 and 7 year leases with tenants and logistics companies that come and go. The resistance that's coming up and the misstatements that are being said only drive us to that point. It's not a threat, it's just a fact. When I walk away from here, I want to be able to say that what I said was true depending on whatever the outcome is. If we represent manufacturing, that's our goal. The manufacturers we're dealing with are world-class people. Some of the manufacturers sitting here, Lamtech and Ultra Poly, can vouch for that. Some of the supervisors can vouch for that. I've had to meet with these people. They're people that are national and international in scope. They're people that need rail, which this site has. They need high power, which this site has. They need high-capacity electrical usage, which this site has. Very unique assets that are representative of this site relative to other sites in the Lehigh Valley. This is a chance for Northampton County to promote manufacturing. This shouldn't be deemed as a warehouse manufacturing battle that we need to shut this off because we're against warehouses. A big box isn't necessarily a warehouse. The statements here tonight about 300,000 and 400,000 square foot users being the only manufacturers, totally untrue. One of the prime candidates that we're negotiating with now is 849,000 square feet of manufacturing. Their sister company is almost 600,000 square feet. We have another one, 701,000 square feet, manufacturing. So Mr. Friedman, to make statements like that, totally unfounded. For Mr. Cole to talk about high cube warehouses being our target, totally unfounded. We don't have one high cube warehouse in the 11 people that we're negotiating with. So it's hard for me to not be frustrated with the misrepresentation of information. The end result is a warehouse will be about 40% more net tax revenue. A manufacturer has about a 40% delta in net tax revenue over a warehouse use. We went back, did an analytical analysis of all the warehouses in the Lehigh Valley and all the manufacturers. That's a net uptick in revenue. So the same site that generates a $1.20 a square foot tax revenue per year is closer to $1.50 to $1.60 a year if it's a manufacturing use. They spend more on the interior of the building, they spend more on the use of the building. It's not a quarry shell that is taxed at a rate that generates a $1.21 in tax revenue.
30 seconds.
Palmer Township in the last 3 years, has realized $4.7 million in transfer tax revenue net to the township as a result of the activity in Palmer Township of 5 million square feet. That's 3 times their projection of $1.5 million. While it's not predictable, it's a reality. The transfer tax is a huge source of revenue net to the township. Again, it's the type of building that generates that value, that generates that tax revenue. I want to stress that the need to have LRTA is to bring the types of tenants that we want to. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
There were people on this side, sir? Name and address.
Hi, my name is Bud Hackett. I live in Bethlehem, city of Bethlehem in Northampton County. I have for many years, since the early 90s, been involved as a practitioner in economic development or as a volunteer in economic development. And it was in that capacity, in and around 2014, 2015, that I was invited to meet with the Bangor Area School District Industrial Development Authority. And that was a group of people that was, frankly, at wit's end, trying to figure out what they're going to do to help their community grow and meet their objectives. At the time, I was a bit of a whipping post for that committee because much of my work had been in Route 22, Route 33, 78, and Route 100. And the question was, how come we can't get any of that up here in Upper Mount Bethel? Why is it happening in other areas and not happening here? My question was, what do you want to achieve? And there were two issues that have been talked about so much here tonight. We need to do something about tax revenue flowing to the school district. That's the conversation that was occurring. We have all sorts of new people coming into the school district. Our costs are going up. There's no way the people in this community will be able to afford the increase taxes associated with schools. And the other issue is the jobs issue. This is 2015, before the LRTA, before this development had taken place. We want a place where our kids can work in our community and not have to go someplace else. We want good jobs so that our people can put food on the table. What are we going to do? And I don't know that it's a result of those conversations with me, but I'm just relating what was going on in the minds of good people from your community that were looking to improve economic development in the area. Mr. Grisella, Mr. Jeff Manzi were two that I remember that were very, very active. And I believe that the LRTA stemmed from some of those conversations. And that was essentially, we need to, the Upper Mount Bethel community, we need to provide some incentives to attract the kinds of companies that we want in this area. You've seen some great companies come up here today. To go back to the question, why an incentive? It hasn't happened. There hasn't been a lot of good manufacturing, good industrial growth. It needs some form of incentive. Believe me, there are hundreds of projects going elsewhere, and the Upper Mount Bethel community needs some incentive to help people consider moving there and providing the benefits that have been discussed. My comments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The gentleman behind you, there you go. Name and
My name is Robert Teal. I'm Vice Chairman of Upper Mount Bethel Township Board of Supervisors. I'm also the Chairman of the Upper Mount Bethel Township Planning Commission. I just wanted to say, the difference of what's going on here. I know that there's a lot of controversy. They don't want anything. Maybe they do want something. Yes, I have been working with the developer, and I've gotten more concessions out of him and their group than any other area around here. I will give you an example. On Enigma, we developed Enigma, and that's a program that will subsidize the development until the LRTA goes away. It does have a sunset clause. When LRTA goes away, or when LRTA kicks in or goes away, then the Enigma will cease. And Enigma got, what I got out of the developer was 75 cents for every square foot on it. When they issue a building permit, there will be 75 cents per square foot going to our town directly. After that, they have to give us 15 cents a square foot for every square foot of building in that development for our emergency services. The fire companies, and I just renegotiated a deal for an ambulance, because Upper Mount Bethel Township only has one ambulance that's housed in Bangor, and that's Suburban. I talked with Suburban the other day. I've been talking with them for a couple months, and they are agreeing. I came up with a plan, and I asked them, will this move the needle? You might think about this. I said, will this move the needle if every citizen in Upper Mount Bethel Township was a subscriber? They said, well, they came back with a number, it's $337,000 or $377,000 to house a BLS ambulance in Mount Bethel. I went back to Mr. Pector. I said, Lou, I need $200,000 to pay for subscribers for Mount Bethel. It makes everybody in Mount Bethel in our area a subscriber. He said, we can do this. We can do this. We can do this. Other than that, what I got for our town was a $2 million commitment for a new municipal building, so our town doesn't have to meet in the garage whenever we have more than 50 people. We have to move out the road crew to have a meeting. So if we had a new municipal building, hopefully it would be built up at our park. We have a beautiful park. And the building would go up there. Finally, I got a $1 million commitment from them for a new environmental educational facility to be housed at our industrial, or our park, what we call our preserve, Eastern Industries, that they have to give me, or give our town, not me, a $1 million building fund for a new municipal building. I was the one who worked very hard up in Monroe County for the Kettle Creek project and helped fund theirs. I thought since they have it, we deserve it. And we deserve that in Mount Bethel for our children. Please help me do that. And lastly, I was talking to Tara about this 2 weeks ago, is I've been working very hard with them, and they've been very cooperative to make sure that those buildings going in there will be architecturally and environmentally pleasing and rurally acceptable to our community. You need to ask me something?
I would like to ask a question.
We got 30 seconds, sir.
Go ahead.
I got 30 seconds, go ahead.
I just want to ask if any of these things are contingent on whether or not we vote yes for this LRTA. These things that you have enumerated that Mr. Pector has.
I barely hear you.
These things that you have negotiated with Mr. Pector,
It's
are
in
they
writing.
contingent on whether or not we vote yes for LRTA, or is he going to give them to you
No.
anyway? They're not?
They're not contingent
Just
upon.
wanted to know. Thank you.
They're not contingent upon, I would like to answer that if I can.
Please do.
All of these things we negotiated with, that I was the chief negotiator. This was all done after the text amendment by a
Address the
leap of
chair,
faith, as you want to say that, okay? And nothing was contingent upon that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Ma'am? I know. I want to remind everybody, we're still going to have a public hearing on this before we vote.
It's going to be forever.
Sandra Newman, Riverton Road, Lower Mount Bethel Township. I'm here, as Samantha was, representing my Board of Supervisors. Given that the developer, Mr. Lou Pector, stated publicly at the last council meeting that he will move ahead with this project whether he is granted the LRTA renewal or not. We think that the county would be wise to deny that extension. As has been mentioned many times here tonight, it does not fall into a deteriorated area. It's virgin land or farmland. What we do think is that the old Reliant power plant, or RPL East, I guess it's called, does fit into that description.
It's a deteriorated site that is desperately in need of development, reconstruction, cleaning up. So we agree with Mr. Kusak's opinion that it would be wise to not renew the LRTA for the vacant property, but to certainly renew it for the former power plant. It seems tonight that, according to Mr. Pector, prospects look good for manufacturing. The site is got the power. It's a great location. And he's talking to companies who are seemingly very interested. We know of 2 companies that have come here without the LRTA, and they're doing well, and their businesses are prospering, even though they're looking for help. So, in conclusion, I think that you should consider a LRTA renewal for the former power plant and to forego renewing the LRTA for the development on property that is not depressed or not in need of remediation. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? With that said, I want to thank everybody for being respectful with this process that we just went through for the last hour or so. And we're going to move on at this point. Mr. County Executive, it's your turn.
Mr. President, in light of all of the work you have ahead of you tonight, I'll demur and not report unless there are any questions from the commissioners of the County Council.
Anybody? Yes, Mr.
Just briefly, could you comment on the West Easton fire and our
Yes, so let me start backwards. I am incredibly grateful, and you know, we talk a lot about regionalism with the alphabet soup, LV, you know, all that stuff. But the real regionalism is the support that Lehigh County and Northampton County give to one another during things such as this disastrous fire. And two things you need to know. Lehigh County Hazmat was on scene with Northampton County Emergency Management at the fire, and we thank Lehigh County for that. But more importantly, just about every tanker truck in Northampton County responded to this fire, which made us potentially vulnerable to fires elsewhere. The Lehigh County strike team came to a forward position at the park and ride at 33. And they were prepared to respond to any fires in Northampton County. So we thank Lehigh County Hazmat and the strike team for supporting us. 2 EMS units responded to the fire. 23 fire companies responded to the fire. Talk about mutual aid and community support. What a wonderful example of that, and we thank them. Northampton County thanks all of the fire departments and EMS agencies that responded to that fire. Also, the state was here with us. A DEP was here to monitor the air because there was potential that the fire released hazardous fumes into the atmosphere. It did not. DEP monitored that. PA Fish and Boat were here as well, and DEP and Fish and Boat erected a barrier to make sure that the water that was used to fight the fire did not drain into the river, thereby causing an environmental hazard. So that's my report on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have anything for Mr. McClure? Thank you, sir. Okay, old business. Public hearing of the ordinance entitled, an ordinance by Northampton County Council concurring with the Upper Mount Bethel Township Bangor Area School District and providing for property tax exemption for certain deteriorated property as defined in ordinance 2017-04 of the Upper Mount Bethel pursuant with Act 76 of 1977 of the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as amended 72 PS 4722 ET. Mr. Giovanni and Mr. Galfredo introduced this ordinance on March 16th of the meeting. We ask if there's any questions or comments from the public. Now's the time to do that. I think we pretty much covered that. Discussion? Yes, is there someone? Go ahead. Sure, you still got 5 minutes.
Okay. Shouldn't have said that. We heard a lot of comments here tonight, and what I didn't hear from anyone that was a proponent of this was revitalization, other than our farmland appears to be degrading over the last 5 years, which I would dispute. We talked about, I heard incentive mentioned. Well, there is an incentive, a big one for the developer, because the zoning was essentially gutted for that developer. Now, I didn't know that the LRTA predated the developer, but apparently there was a big incentive that was thrown out by a couple people in the room here tonight. I was previously going to talk about what it's like to go to a meeting up there. There's really been a lot of disrespect shown, in my opinion, to the citizens by the supervisory majority of the body. We saw some of that disrespect here tonight, which is unfortunate. The fact is, they have 5 buildings that are greater than 500,000 square feet. And I hear we're going for manufacturing, but I also heard that the people that have manufacturing don't have buildings that large, the ones here. They've been asked at public meetings, do you have clients? We heard here tonight a lot more than anything that's been disclosed. Only thing that's been disclosed at the public meetings in Upper Mount Bethel is, well, we can't disclose that, we're talking to people. We actually heard a lot more detail about pie in the sky here tonight, in my opinion. A majority of the sitting supervisors, with the assistance of a handful of enablers, bought the citizens of Upper Mount Bethel a pig in a poke when they allowed a developer to rewrite their zoning ordinance, which now explicitly excludes Pector's intended development from many of the provisions of the ordinance. I never heard of such a thing. The rumor is this development is currently for sale for $200 million. It is understandable that investors are getting cold feet. Northampton County should not continue to support the false narrative that has been put forth on the viability of this project and its purported benefits to the community. The voters of Upper Mount Bethel Township have rejected this notion, and we should too. Regarding the NID and the fire, I'm a supervisor in a township, and fire safety and police safety is obviously very important. There's a NID, but the NID expires. What if they buy a ladder truck on time, on credit? When it expires, the citizens will be stuck with the debt. And they'll be also stuck with the maintenance. And then it can be used for maintenance while it's in effect also. Let's see. I believe the 25% are supposed to be high cube, and they really are gargantuan. I don't know how they can be architecturally, really pleasing. I think they're very tall. You might be lucky. Might be about it. I would say that the likelihood, if you heard, I spout off, I'm an engineer, so that's why you hear a bunch of numbers, but if you heard the numbers I gave you, I believe those are accurate. And I think you're going to get warehouses one way or the other. So I would strongly support Mr. Cusick's amendment, as has been stated by others here, to support the revitalization of the power plant property, but certainly not the one across the street. I don't know the details of why it was approved in the first place, but I really don't think it applies to that part of the property. I really appreciate the opportunity again. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Ma'am?
I just want
Say your
to,
name again, please.
Francis Fisicaro. I just
you.
want to clear up something about one of the people who came up here to speak about our sewer, where I had said that the drip irrigation is going to be in our park. Well, yes, it was at the presentation that Lou Pector did for our town. He did state that the citizens of Upper Mount Bethel's drip irrigation would be in our park. And then he had 2 other places where his warehouses or buildings or industrial things would be their drip irrigation. Second of all, I would request you to ask Mr. Teal if he has all these things in writing that Lou Pector is saying that he would do for our town. Thank you.
Shaking his head, yeah.
Anyone else, please? Mr. McClory, then I'll have the gentleman in the back.
I, over the last two meetings, have become convinced, and I've met with him before on this issue many years ago, Mr. Pector. I have become convinced that they want to do manufacturing at this facility. I believe that. And I am so convinced of it that I suggest that you table your ordinance upon conclusion of the public hearing and allow us an opportunity to negotiate with the developer and the township to limit our portion of the LRTA to manufacturing. Now, we'll need time for that because how you define manufacturing is a complicated question, and it would need to be actually defined within the ordinance. Types of activities that would be manufacturing. Clearly, some of the businesses we've heard from tonight would be manufacturing. A juice packager, if you will, may or may not, but that would need to be negotiated. So I suggest, that would be my suggestion to council, to package that, give us an opportunity to limit this LRTA to manufacturing, because it is the policy of county administration to no longer incentivize warehouse development in Northampton County, because we do not need any other warehouses. And I am told by LVEDC, amongst others, that this type of incentive is not necessary for warehouse development in Northampton County. They'll develop warehouses with or without the incentive. So we might as well get all of the tax money if that's what's going to happen. But I believe them, and I think we should have the opportunity to negotiate with them to limit the LRTA to manufacturing. Additionally, the ordinance, if passed tonight in its form, and I only say this to help you with your deliberations, will be vetoed, because we don't need to incentivize warehouse development with tax breaks. Thank you.
Sir. Mr. Pinter, I believe you are.
Those of us that are in business understand that time kills projects. This project has already been delayed over 2.5 years with undue, shall I say, lawsuits that were not merited and lacked basis, which were thrown out of court. We are already 2.5 years behind on grabbing the tax dollars that are so much needed. You heard about the fire trucks that we have bought. In the past year, we've given over $1 million to our fire and rescue folks. A lot of that was the COVID money because they desperately needed it. Our oldest, I'll say our youngest truck in our road fleet, which you heard we have to cover 114 miles within our township, is a 2010. Prior organizations and prior boards never properly managed funds to replace this equipment as it depreciated. The naysayers in the back will say, well, they have the money for this. That was one of my bases by running for office when I did. I knew that we needed to have financial stability and a proper outlook for this community moving forward. The more we keep kicking the can down the road and not making a decision is hurting our community. It's hurting our fire company. It's hurting our road department that keeps roads clear during the winter. Last year, we had 3 out of 5 trucks parked during major snowstorms because they're old, they're broken. We spend over roughly $127,000 a year in keeping these trucks on the road to make sure that our citizens are safe. We had to bite the apple. We had to make those purchases now. Those trucks are 2.5 years out. We need to order them now, otherwise it could be longer. So I urge you not to push this further down. I urge you to make that vote tonight. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I will make this really quick. Because of the misinformation, and I don't think anybody's being, whatever about it, but let me just correct the situation here. Citizens of Upper Mount Bethel sued our Board of Supervisors for taking away our environmental constraints and with a text amendment written by the developer. The developer then jumped in on that action and actually asked our citizens group to settle. It never even got to court. So it didn't get kicked out of court. It was a settlement between the developer and the citizens, who the developer turned around and was suing, which then some of our supervisors wanted to sue us too for the cost. So just straightening the record. Sorry to make this go on so long. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
Just one comment. I go back to my original contention. This is, does the LRTA,
Can I have your name again?
oh, Fred Clark, sorry, Fred Clark, Upper Mount Bethel. Does the LRTA apply to the entire property or portions of the property because they are deteriorated? Specifically, I'm talking about the farmlands specifically, and it's unclear to me how a farmland is an economically depressed community. Now, I've heard a lot, and there are great points on both sides, all right? But, what you need to rule on, I believe, in my opinion, is does LRTA apply in this case? Not about trucks, it's not about school districts, it's does LRTA apply to this situation? Or does it apply to the entire situation or just a portion of the situation? You will call it the way you call it, but that's what you're here to, I think, speak about. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Pector. Say your name again for.
Lou Pector,
Thank you, sir.
to River Point Development. I applaud Mr. McClure's devotion to manufacturing, and I share the same goal. I'm open to extending this vote until we can come to terms where manufacturing only is applied to LRTA or vice versa. If we elect to have a warehouse component and we have to define warehouse, that the LRTA would not apply to the warehouse component as to the county component of LRTA. And I think it's a fair compromise. I think it's in the spirit of showing we should all be driven to do a better thing with a property that's going under development and not do the easiest thing. It'd be very easy to make this all logistics. So I think from the greater value created for both township, the county, and the school district, I'm open to a negotiated settlement of where we apply the county's LRTA only to manufacturing use on the I-2 and I-3 property.
I thank you, sir. Do we have anybody else? If not, now it's council's time to discuss. Ms. Zirinsky, I'll start your way and work my way around.
I really appreciate you starting with me because I want to clear my name. There were some aspersions cast in my direction for comments that I made on WFMZ. And I can say that I told everything that I understood to be true from the people that informed me. If anybody wanted to come inform me, you've had years to do that. And I've spoken to many people on this project. I've attended your public meetings. And I've talked to individuals. I respect what you're trying to do, Mr. Pector. I respect that there is economic development here and that there is a possibility to lift up a community. But I do have some questions, and I don't like my integrity being one of them. It is my understanding that this piece of property that we are discussing today is the Met-Ed property. Is that correct? And it's my understanding that in documents that I acquired from the Bangor Area Commercial and Industrial Development Authority, financial statements year-end December 31st, 2001, that as more fully described during 2001, the authority entered into agreement of sale to acquire real property in the amount of $5 million, which was financed by a non-revolving line of credit promissory note from the developer. Is that correct? Well, according to this, it is. On that property, that was purchased, to my knowledge, so that a grant could be acquired from the municipal entity so that that property could be remediated by a super fund, which is a government subsidy, right? That will remediate the property, and then the property will be transferred back to Mr. Pector. So in my understanding of this, I think by the time Mr. Pector gets that property back in his possession, it will no longer be deteriorated, but it would have been remediated by the government itself. And so that is why I would vote against this LRTA, because I don't believe that the property will be deteriorated. I also believe that I remember that this will go forward no matter what. That the things promised to this community are not contingent of whether or not we vote on this LRTA. I think that this is a really important thing that we discuss here today, because we have so many people in front of us who are on both sides of this subject. And we sit here not as judge and jury, but we try to make the best decisions that we possibly can with the information that we receive and we are given. We are not liars. We are not charlatans. We are not trying to damage your communities with our votes. We are trying to do the best that we can as elected officials, given the information that we have. I also had some other information here. These roads are going to be, I have the budget from Upper Mount Bethel Township, which I also acquired. Road maintenance, cleaning, snow removal, streets, traffics, and everything totals $1,114,733. I cannot imagine that those roads are going to get any better with all that truck traffic. And I cannot imagine that the tax revenue from LRTA is going to support the rebuilding of the roads or the maintenance of those roads. That is roughly 25 to 30% of your budget. That is a lot. And I have here the notes from the meeting about the 2 mil increase, about why that actually happened. And if anybody wants to know, I'll be happy to share my right to knows with you. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that these jobs are going to come within a half a mile, or 30-minute radius. That these jobs could be coming from anywhere, that they are not necessarily going to go to the people in the Slate Belt. We're talking about people from New Jersey, and we're also talking about people who are going to eventually need housing. Housing creates more per capita services that not only we would have to supply, but you will have to supply too as a municipality. So I think that we need to really think about this more when we grant tax breaks, and not to the municipalities, but to developers. Thank you.
Mr. Lott?
I was going to hold off and wait a little bit, but I've met with both sides. You know, I like development. I like creating good manufacturing jobs for our residents to work at. So originally, I was very much in favor of this. And then as time went on, I realized the opposition, you know, there is a lot of opposition. There was not opposition back in 2017. So I did listen to both sides. It comes down to, the argument for it is taxes and jobs. That's all I've heard, taxes and jobs. So I've also, by the developer's own statement last month and by a letter we received the next day, and again today by our supervisor, this project's moving. This project's gonna move forward. Whether we pass, I'm sorry, people, whether we turn this letter down, it's still gonna move forward. So what we're left with is, can we, to me, this is of course me, if we grant the LRTA, I want to see what everybody wants to see here is those manufacturing jobs. But to this date, we haven't given that assurance, or we have no guarantee, or, that even a percentage will be manufacturing. And, we keep being told we can't put it in the LRTA. I'd say put it in the LRTA and let's see what happens. Maybe Chris will have to defend us or something. But anyway, if it was manufacturing, but there's no guarantee on manufacturing. As far as the taxes go, if this project's moving forward, regardless of LRTA or not, we're giving away 50% of the taxes in the next 10 years. I don't know how that'll help the fire companies and the municipality. Now, you can say, well, we'll gain it back after the 10 years. Well, from listening to people here, I don't think we can wait 10 years to increase the tax base. So I think it's counterintuitive to actually put a LRTA on this thing, because by the own developer's acknowledgement, supervisor's acknowledgement, this thing's happening anyway. So why would we give a 50% tax cut over the 10-year period, and that's what it comes down to, for something that's going to happen anyway when we need it, when a community's sitting here telling me how bad they need the taxes. So I can't justify that in my head. What I can justify in my head is if we could get some kind of guarantee that the manufacturing, that our LRTA would go toward manufacturing. I also agree with the people, and I don't know why it was done. I don't know of any other LRTA I sat on. I didn't sit on this LRTA when it was passed, but that included farmland and open space. That is an issue. I could kind of, because I'm so pro-manufacturing, so pro-job, I could kind of look the other way. I might be able to look the other way and support if I had some kind of guarantee on manufacturing. I also like Mr. Cusick's amendment, because with regards to what you're saying, that it's going to be cleaned up, but it isn't cleaned up right now. So to me, that piece of property fits the LRTA, and I would be comfortable supporting that. I'd also be comfortable supporting something that guaranteed the LRTA was only going to manufacturing. That's my comfort level. So I'm hoping we can table this thing. Let's see if we can get some kind of guarantee that this is going to be a manufacturing LRTA. Because I think most people, even the audience seems a lot, even the citizens, seemed a lot more comfortable if it was a manufacturing. It meets their goals. So if I don't really want to cut off everybody else's comments, but I will be making a motion in the future to table this. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I'm a supporter of the LRTA for the property. I've lived in the Slate Belt area for decades. My family still lives in Upper Mount Bethel. When you look at the Slate Belt uniquely, it's a regional development, whether it be Penarja Wind Gap or over to Mount Bethel, Portland. It is a regional impact no matter what you do overall. If you look at the property in question, it is zoned industrial and has been for decades. LVDC says don't put stuff where it doesn't belong, but if it's zoned and planned that way, that's where it should go. As Mr. Pector and others have reiterated, it has the water, has the roadway, has the rail system, and it has the power system in order to do the very thing that I believe Mr. Pector is promising, which is to bring manufacturing. Nobody wants warehousing. I don't want warehousing in the Slate Belt, Upper Mount Bethel, Bangor, anywhere else, quite honestly. However,
this is a unique opportunity for the region. I don't see it coming around again. I have talked to Mr. Pector. I do believe in the intention that he's putting forth, guarantees or not. I don't think he'd ever get 100% guarantee out of any developer. As far as using the LRTA to cherry pick which property and what usage, I'm not sure that that's actually legally viable in order to be able to do that. This county has passed LRTAs before on farmland, pure farmland, not deteriorated land. And if you look back far enough, it's probably been used multiple times for developing properties that might not fit that definition overall. The Gen-On plan absolutely fits that bill, and it's been a part of I think, the incentive to rehab that ultimately. The tax base in the Slate Belt is challenging. The borough of Bangor and several of the other boroughs are challenged because we don't have the footprint. We don't have the space to bring in development. We're lucky if we get a company to move in. Bangor, Washington Township attracted BioSpectra, a great pharmaceutical manufacturer doing very, very well, bringing very high-end jobs. But without this particular development, I think we would go a long time. The development is going to go forth with or without the LRTA. The challenge that I see is without the LRTA, then you're basically pushing the development to the wrong end of the spectrum and bringing about potentially the very thing that most people speaking against the project or actually don't want, which is warehousing or lower end type of investment in the region. And that's what I find a bit of a contradiction. I think collectively we all agree we want manufacturing, but without the LRTA, it's going to not hurt the developer per se, but disincentivize companies like Ultra Poly, Air Liquide, and others that would want to come in because they're the ones that actually benefit from the tax break, as we heard. The reinvestment of those tax dollars back into equipment, back into actually creating jobs. And that's what this conversation really is overall. So there have been a number of other things that have been said, but I think collectively from a community, regional perspective, I think it's important that this development goes through. I think the surrounding townships and communities do benefit. One of the speakers talked about the balancing the negative and the positive aspects of it. And I do believe in the long run that the positive aspects long-term will outweigh some of the negative impacts. You're going to get the trucks, you're going to get the roads, you're going to get the cars, you're going to get the population one way or another. I think we need to incentivize the project to give them the best opportunity to attract the highest end type of companies that could come in and with that higher end jobs overall. There's been a big push across the Lehigh Valley for quite some time now and about manufacturing. What's so cool about manufacturing, we even have programs into the elementary schools and middle schools in order to incentivize our youth to go into manufacturing. And here we have an opportunity to potentially bring in a dozen manufacturers into our very region, into a very important corner of the Northampton County. And yet we're talking about, wanting to curb that because of a tax incentive on a property that's already zoned industrial. Nothing's been done about this for decades. It's already been there. So I think I'll support the LRTA as it's currently written. Thank you.
Mr. Heckman?
President, last time we heard for quite a while, it's been over 2 hours, and I've heard from everybody, I've heard suggestions of cabling, I've heard suggestions of this amendment, that amendment. I would like, if you don't mind, I'd like to hear from the prime sponsor. I haven't heard yet from the sponsor of your,
I'm working my way over that way.
Well, but I mean, I might have a comment, but I want to know, he's our District 4 rep, and I was leaning towards our district. And Mr. Gofredo lives up there, so they are the ones who put this forward. So I appreciate everybody's opinion and counsel, but before I have any judgment, I would really like to hear from them.
I can respect that. That's why I work my way around over that way. Mr. Galfredo?
First, I have a couple questions for our solicitor. When we had the Dixie Cup plant come in here, one of the big stipulations that I was hung up on was we wanted to grant them alerta for the Dixie Cup, but we couldn't guarantee that it would turn into some sort of manufacturing because they said, and I believe you said, that we couldn't write that in to the LERTA. Was that true then, and is it true now that we can't make it conditional on the use if it meets zoning?
As we discussed earlier this evening, the municipality's planning code grants zoning to the municipality, and that's done by the state legislature. As we have discussed here a number of times, this body is without zoning authority, period. What I do here is come to Jesus moment, if you would, between the administration and the developer to address that concern and maybe a path for solution. So that may be enter into your thought process and decision-making. Thank you.
It definitely does. That's definitely one of the biggest, I think, as divided as this room is, one thing that everybody can agree upon is nobody wants more warehouses. I think that's people Lehigh Valley wide agree on that, but especially in Upper Mount Bethel and the Slate Belt, people value their rural scenic atmosphere. But as somebody that's involved on this county council and people in the back of the room with the fire departments that I'm intimately, I associate with, and I have uncles on, in certain borough administrations, I see everybody struggling to pay their bills. And to say that we're not a depressed area, maybe depressed isn't the right word, but I believe the comment has been made more than once that the two main industries that provided economic revenue and jobs are gone, and they haven't been replaced. And the people I went to school with are gone. They leave. And I noticed most of the opposers are near retirement age or older. That's a commonality that you all have. I would like to see people that I went to school with, people that I grew up with, stay in the area that I live in. And it's very hard to do that when you don't have an opportunity to work there. It's very hard to get a scoreboard for a Little League field when the biggest employer is the school district. That's a problem. And I coach, and I see the kids, and I see the families, and I see the working conditions and the opportunities that they have or that they don't have. And I've went over this before, so everybody knows I'm clearly in favor of supporting this LERTA. But the main reason why I'm supporting it is because we already granted it, and now we are going back on it. And I think that's bad business by our county. I think when we commit to something and a developer steps in after the fact, under the understanding that these conditions exist, and then the politics change of it, so we change our mind, I don't think that's a good look. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So I will support it. I also will support the right to the executive and the developer to adjust the LERTA to guarantee manufacturing, if that is at all possible. What I don't want to do is extend this much longer, because I know there are people that are talking about committing to this site, manufacturing companies. We've heard one spoke already, and I've known of manufacturers that have had to walk away already because of the time constraints. That is, it being in the industry, one of the biggest challenges is dealing with these situations. And I don't think this is a corporate welfare. I think it's an incentive to do a hard project. This would not be an easy project. It will be a very expensive project. And to bring manufacturing places, people are competitive. Townships are competitive and boroughs are competitive. So we need to be competitive so we can get those sought-after manufacturers here. Or we will get warehousing. Because I could guarantee you one thing, he's going to do something with that piece of property. He bought it, he invested money in it, he's going to build something on it. We need to make it what we want it to be. I do like the opportunity of renegotiating that LERTA. If that's a possibility, I think that's great. But I will support the project, and I will support the LERTA eventually, hopefully sometime soon.
Are you finished? Yeah. Mr. Giovanni.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. I just want to call attention and correct Mr. Lott, Article 12, where this LERTA isn't for 10 years. It's the remaining 5 years that was already approved on the 10. That's for the LERTA, if you read the thing. Okay. I think it's needed up there. And like I said, I've seen people that are struggling with their taxes. My father-in-law is one of them. And he only lives in Evergreen Village. which is a village with double-wide trailers. He can't afford the taxes. He's part of that 16% that pays the taxes Upper Mount Bethel. So I will support this LRTA also. And it's just to extend it to the 5 years, which will end on December 31st, 2027. We're not extending it 10 years. We're giving back the regular 5 that's already been quoted.
Hold on a second.
And I could be wrong with my understanding, but to apply for the LRTA is would be a 5-year window. This LRTA actually expires unless it's renewed. So it isn't a continuing, if we don't renew it, it expires. It was a 5-year LRTA back then. My understanding, the way the LRTA works is they have 5 years to break ground, then they have a 10-year tax window. So my numbers were correct, Mr. Giovanni. They get a 10-year tax break, that's 50% of the taxes they'd be paying offsetting. So if somebody starts at the last of the 5 years, that's really 15, from this point forward, it's 15 years out. But they have 5 years to break ground. I believe it's breaking ground is what, or pulling the permit is what starts your LRTA. But it's a 10-year LRTA. And if I am incorrect on that, please, somebody correct me.
I'm going to refer to the solicitor and that, and if there's something else he wants to add to that, and we'll go from there.
Let me just say that the genesis of this, the beginning of this, was from Mr. G, where this was brought to my attention that it expired in 5 years. And when I contacted him, he was good enough to get the township manager a letter of October
From one of the supervisors.
from one of the supervisors,
Right,
24th,
from Mr.
to renew it. And I think the terms and conditions of the LRTA are exact with what they were before. I crafted it.
So I'm not quite clear. If they apply in the next 5, if this LRTA was passed today and they apply in the next 5 years, is it a 10-year tax break or is it a 5-year tax break?
There's an exemption schedule in Article 4 that sets forth a 10-year timeframe.
Thank you. It's a 10-year tax break.
Oh,
I know.
okay. You done, Chris? Any other statement you wouldn't make?
No, I'm done.
Mr. Go ahead. Is your mic on?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, this letter, didn't the manager sent a letter to the county DCED in October of last year
That's correct.
about renewing this or going forward?
Yeah.
Did they ever reply to him?
Not that I'm aware of. I got a receipt that they received it.
Yes, we did. He was copied on it. Him and Fargo have copies.
Okay, the manager, I was under the impression it hadn't happened, so I wasn't aware, that's what I was trying to find out.
About a month
kinda-
later.
Can we,
It was in January.
It was in November. And then it
I'll look at my records. I think it was
I'm not at the.
thank you.
I will provide counsel tomorrow with the emails which you and Ms. Fargo Hefner are copied on. Mr. Nelson's email was acknowledged, the receipt of it was acknowledged. You were copied on that, and I think it was in November. And then again in December, there was some communication. Okay?
Okay. Now, before we go any further, Mr. Cusack, before I get to you, Lori, okay? Mr. Cusack.
Yeah, well, before I get started, I've heard a lot about emergency services, and over 4 terms, I've approved boatloads of grants for emergency services. So for those folks out there that need emergency services, well, Tina left. For those of you that need grant money for emergency services, we have programs. Please apply. If you're not, then your township manager isn't doing his job. On top of that, your state representative and state senators have a program as well that grants money for emergency services. If you need these trucks, if you need additional equipment, that money is there. Please apply for it. I will gladly support that, and I've never voted against one. So as far as that goes, I wanted to address that first. Secondly, to me, it's clear. The old Genon factory belongs in Alerta. The balance of the property, I don't think fits the definition. That being said, I am willing to listen to Mr. McClure's proposal before I introduce my amendment, which would have restricted this to strictly those 190 acres of the old power plant. Thank you.
Ms. Varr, you have something, please?
I'm still here.
Yeah, I would like, if you would like to make a statement at this point?
Sure. I look at this very simply, and I appreciate everybody that came to us. But 5 years ago, when this was brought to us the first time, it was a desperate plea from the administration to please support this LRTA to help the Slate Belt develop economically. No developer was on the project at the time, and I was under the impression that it was a 10-year LRTA. So I was surprised to hear that there was a 5-year window. I approved it back then for that express purpose. I'm happy to reapprove it today for that express purpose. I'm not going to get into, as Mr. Gafredo so aptly stated, who the developer is or isn't and what he will or will not do. If my colleagues from the Slate Belt want to opt for a deferral to allow them to negotiate this, I'll vote with them on that. But otherwise, I'm prepared to vote yes on it tonight.
Are you finished? Lori? Are you
For this
done?
minute,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Mr. Heckman?
Okay. Thank you. And I assume your ordinance is still on the table,
It is.
unchanged? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's been brought up, and I agree. 5 years ago, we were all for this, and I don't know what's changed in 5 years. As far as warehouses go, who wants a warehouse? I mean, talk to the people below you. The warehouses, I mean, we have a couple going on 191 between Hecktown and Nazareth. We got a couple going outside of Moore Township. I mean, these aren't even close anymore to hubs. They're just, wherever they get the land. And I'd love to be still living in the area I lived in. I mean, you went north of 22, you had farms. It was rural nature. You had farms, you had cement mills, and you had quarries. And everything, it was beautiful. But, and you had cities that were kind of small. Now, I mean, I live in Bethlehem. Bethlehem wants to put up over 1,000 apartments, unaffordable apartments, that are called affordable, over the course of the next year. And that doesn't count the ones on their borders. Developers, and this isn't directed to Mr. Pector, if anybody trusts the developer, and I've learned this as I've been on here, God bless you. I believe in the Bath Hotel sign, and God we trust, everybody else pays cash. And that applies to a lot of people, including developers. I mean, they're going to tell you it's the best situation. And I keep trying to go back and say, okay, well, what could we do? What couldn't we do? I keep coming this, he owns the land. He owns the land. Now, unless you can make him an offer he can't refuse, there's something you think you can do, he's going to do what he's going to do. My thought with this LRTA was, and I think it still is, if there's any incentive for manufacturing, and he's claiming there is, am I going to stake my life on that? Hell no. But the thing is, I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, if in fact we've heard about the law, if this is illegal, get a lawyer and go to court. I mean, the old render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and everybody who's elected in here thinks they're a little Caesar. And to God, that is God, and I refer to the courts as God. They'll tell you if it's legal or not legal, not us, not anybody sitting in here. So, I mean, you still have alternatives. We're not here making a decision that's going to either sink or float this decision. The school district said yes. The municipality said yes. So now it's in front of us, and I agree with Mr. Kuzic. Over the years, we've done so many LRTAs, and honestly, I regret some of them. In fact, going forward, I don't know what LRTAs I would approve. The days of nobody knowing Northampton County is here, and it's accessible or long gone. So as far as giving somebody an incentive, I don't think we need to do that. LVEDC has done their job. We're way, way overdeveloped now. So the thing is, I just am holding out hope that even if we pass this tonight, that doesn't stop Mr. Pector, and if the executive wants to take it on himself to discuss this with you, I don't want us to get into the business of zoning and building any more than we do with LERDAs. I think we're getting into things that just aren't our wheelhouse. So, I mean, I'm inclined to go with my friends from the Slate Belt, even though I love Lake Mincy and I've been out there fishing many times with my son. I took my boat out, love to walk the trails. The idea that somehow you can find a place and be immune from the rest of the county and some of the woes, or hopefully live in a 50s era. I have friends who get mad. They want the Lehigh Valley to go back to the 50s. That's not going to happen. I think your area, though, is still very, very rural and very open. But I think the school districts are making a point. I mean, poor people. There are poor people in your area. I know some of them. They could barely, I don't want to see them get taxed anymore. I mean, yes, it's going to take time, but I mean, yeah, if you could live on land and it's a beautiful view, but there are people who are scraping by. So I want to try and see what we can do for them too. So I'm inclined to support it the way I did 5 years ago. I really don't know what has changed. And in lieu of that, I have to go with my friends from the Northlands.
I guess it's my turn. I find this to be extremely interesting, both sides of it, to be honest with you. The olive branch part of it caught me off guard. I did not expect Mr. Pector to want to negotiate with Mr. McClure. That throws a different wrinkle in it, because I did not come in here with my mind made up, but what my mind was made up was I was going to support the gentleman from the Slate Belt because it's their area. They're well aware of what their people need and what they don't need, and they're more in line and more intertwined with everything that goes on up that way. If they choose that they want the exec to sit down with Mr. Pector and come up with a plan that guarantees manufacturing, I'm going to go along with whatever you gentlemen choose to do. That's where I'm at this point right now. I wasn't here 5 years ago. I think we need to honor what was done 5 years ago, but, and I mean a big but, I think it's awfully important that we allow these two men to sit back and figure out what they want to do. If everybody is in favor of that, I would suggest one of you two who sponsored this come up with some kind of a motion or what you would like to do with this at this point. Ball's in your court, gentlemen. Mr. Kevin Lott.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table this
A second.
ordinance.
Is there a second to table this?
A second.
There is no discussion. Call for the vote.
Call for the vote, please.
Can I ask a question to Mr. Snow?
No, can't have a discussion now because he asked to table it. Once it's tabled, we can no longer discuss it.
Once there's a second.
When it was second. Go ahead.
You asked for a second, right?
Mr. Lott,
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky,
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner,
No.
Mr. Brown,
No.
Mr. Kuzic,
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni,
No.
Mr. Gofredo,
Yes.
Mr. Heckman,
No.
Mr. Myers.
No.
Motion fails by a vote of 4 to 5.
Yes. Now, at this point, yes, Mr. Brown.
I'd like to have a vote on the ordinance as submitted.
Is there a second?
Call for the vote.
Second.
Call for a vote. It was a second by Mr. Giovanni. Mr. Brown made it and Mr. Giovanni seconded. Is there any discussion on it before we go? Just call for the vote.
You can't.
We can have discussion? It's not tabled,
Oh, okay.
so you're going to have discussion on it. Mr.
I would just say I would prefer to have Mr. McClure's input regarding whether or not these are warehouses. So I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
There you go.
Any other discussion?
I'll also be voting against this. I think it was well worth the opportunity to make sure we get manufacturing up there. I thought it was a good, there's a lot of opposition to this. I thought it was a good way to kind of bring it together. Most people said they were not as much against manufacturing, so I thought it was a good out, but, so I will not be supporting it if we can, I will not be giving LERTA potentially to warehouses, and that's what this vote is, so I will not be supporting it.
Hold on a second.
Mr. Myers?
We're voting on it, Lori, before you go any further, we're voting on this thing as presented.
As presented, yeah.
I understand that. I'm still in the discussion phase.
Yes.
So,
ahead.
again, the reason I voted to table is because I wanted the discussion with my colleagues from the site belt as to whether they want to amend it or they want to determine if they want Mr. Pector and Mr. McClure to negotiate or not. So that's why I voted no on tabling it. I want to hear from them.
Mr. Alfredo?
Yeah, I think I understand how contentious the issue is, and we're trying to make concessions, but I think we're losing sight of what's happening here. And at the end of the day, I think Mr. Pector has taken every opportunity to bring in manufacturing, for what his own words, because of the ability to earn more money per square foot. That's his incentive. I could see the incentive for Mr. McClure to have that conversation because he wants to bring in manufacturing. So I did vote yes to table that, even though we didn't really specify what we were tabling and how long we were tabling it for. So I don't know if I can go about, we're already in the middle of a vote. We already seconded something, so we're going into
We're in the
process.
discussion.
It's just discussion.
I don't want to see us voting yes or no because we're not getting everything we want, when at the end of the day, even these negotiations that could happen, I don't know how much we can guarantee anything. You know, nothing in this deal is going to be 100% exactly what everybody wants. I don't want to lose sight of that. My question is for Mr. Kusick. I know you want to make an amendment, and I know we're all over the place right now, but doesn't the LERTA make it more advantageous to bring in manufacturing for the whole site? And would it limiting that LERTA to a certain section of that property make it disadvantageous for manufacturing in certain sections of that site?
I don't believe so. I think if you, as several of our speakers earlier had mentioned, the text of the LERTA law is for redevelopment. And if you narrow it down to this site and this 190 acres, I believe that is more specific and qualifies under the LERTA law as opposed to the balance of the property.
Okay, that's not exactly what I'm asking, and I'm not a lawyer, and the LERTA passed the first time, I'm assuming because it was legal, and it was, I'm getting laughs, but I also heard a lot of things that, frankly, especially somebody that's been in these buildings, I found laughable. I've been in million-square-foot manufacturing facilities, 800,000 square. I've done them, been there, seen it, and everything that I've heard, the people that, in my opinion, are in the know, the people that are paying the bills, the people that have done this before, and the people that have been there every step of the way, I didn't really disagree with much of what they had to say. So if I have to vote on this issue right now, as it is, I'm going to support it, absolutely. I would like to see our executive have the opportunity to, I don't want to say guarantee, but at least improve our position as a county to recruit manufacturing, if it can be done. But I don't want to have to wait 6 months for it. So I did want to put a timetable on tabling something if we were to do that. If I have to vote on this issue, yes or no, as it stands, I'm in favor of it.
Mr. We're going to let the solicitor, because I have a question about that. Go ahead.
In response to your tabling motion, that would be governed by council. You are always subject to a motion and a second and a vote to remove it from the table. So it would not be out in ad infinitum without a timeline on it. You could bring it back to council at the next meeting.
That's up to
That's up to the council, correct, to
bring it off the table.
So I would like to make a motion to table this until, oh, can I not do that now, Mr.
Don't do
President?
that right now.
At this point right now, we are in a motion to vote on as is, that is here tonight.
It was
We-
already seconded.
He did get a second.
Yeah, that's why we're
Yes.
discussing it.
I didn't know that. I'm sorry. I didn't see the hand.
It was indeed second.
I did
Mr. Brown made the motion, and Mr. Giovanni did second it.
second it, yes.
So we're still at that point. We're having discussion on that.
Can I give some direction to this?
Please.
Because this is like heartbreaking.
I may be talking too much. But if I read the tea leaves, because everyone knows I'm the master of the obvious, what I hear is that a number of council members are in favor of this LRTA, and they are very concerned with the usage of the lot, the dichotomy between warehousing and manufacturing. What we've heard is that there is a proposal for Mr. McClure and the developer to negotiate an agreement, and I would trust, when that agreement came back, that it would define what warehousing is. And let's assume that they can't get to 100-0 manufacturing. They could come back 80-20, they could back 70-30, but that would be for council's consideration. Isn't that the most appropriate path to follow? Because it seems to me that there is a path to a solution.
Isn't that what we're
That's up
trying
to-
to vote on?
Before we go any further, we still have discussion on the way that this LRTA is set up now.
That's my point of order.
Okay.
Are we not discussing the Giovanni ordinance as it was written?
Right. Correct.
Without any conditions on it?
Yes.
May I speak to that?
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I thought we were at. As I said, not to paraphrase Mark Antony, Mr. McClure, Mr. Pector are both honorable men. I'm sure they can sit down and come up with definitions. I don't want to, as a county, get into the business of defining what's a warehouse and what's a manufacturing and what percentage and going out. I'm nervous about getting into this discussion at all as a county. That's townships. I mean, and I think we're getting darn close to a zoning issue here. Do we think they deserve a LRTA or don't we? Do we think it qualifies or doesn't it? As far as what he does with it, percentage, this part of the building, one of the concerns I had with, I think it's what Mr. Pector said. If it's X amount of square foot, part of it could be storage. Is that a warehouse? Part of it, though, could be manufacturing. So does half the building get that? It gets into the thing where I'm personally, as a council person for a long time, I don't want to go down that road. I either want to give it a thumb up or I want to give it a thumb down, and what people do after that, they can do. As I said, ultimately, anybody can take it to court, which is a higher rank than any of us, and you can get your lawyer or buy out Pector, buy his land from him. I don't know if he'll take an offer, but, and you can do whatever you want with it. But at the end of the day, I think we're getting way, way deep into local zoning issues. And I mean, I hear what the people are saying. The rest of the county agrees with you. We were marketed to the world, and now here we are. We've all got more trucks than we want. We got more warehouses than we want, and everybody's suffering. So, you know, thank our economic development leaders for steering us in that direction. But I don't think they want to drag it out because they want to get, the sooner we get started, the sooner the clock goes down on what was mentioned on when they could get revenues. And maybe he'll do more and kick more money in to help out. And I agree with Mr. Kusick. You come for us for grants. But I'd like to call for the vote on this ordinance before we get off into anything else. I mean, it'll either go up or it'll go down.
Question.
Okay.
For the solicitor, so you can't table once something's been seconded?
No, because you have to.
Right now, we're in a motion of,
We had a
have to finish
motion,
the vote.
we seconded it. Can you still table something after it's been seconded?
You could have a motion in that regard, correct?
Then I'd like to make a motion again to table this.
I'll second that.
There will be no discussion.
Now there's no
You need to vote on that motion.
We'll vote on it again.
call for the vote, please. As soon as you get set there, Ms. Linda.
Point of order. the motion's already on the floor to vote on the ordinance as is. That has not been concluded. The motion now to table that on top of that motion is appropriate.
Yes.
Thank
What
you.
he said.
Yes.
Didn't we have this exact vote?
Sure did.
We can't just keep having the same vote over and over and over again, can we?
Sure you can.
Sure can.
Sure
Can we? All right, maybe I'm
Sure
new to
can.
this.
Sure
Oh, yeah,
can.
you sure can. Sadly, until we do rules of order for ourselves, you can't.
One last point of order.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Groundhog Day.
Mr. Heckman made a motion to call for the vote, and that was not given opportunity prior to Mr. Lott being acknowledged.
That's true.
That is true.
So I would like to second Mr. Heckman's motion to
I
call for the
withdraw
vote.
my motion. I want to give him a
He
chance.
called the question. It doesn't need to be a motion.
Hey,
He just withdrew the call. Like, let's go get a.
hold on, folks. I don't want to deny Mr. I came here with no hair. I'm leaving even balder.
Tell us what you're going to vote on when you vote.
I most certainly will let you know. As soon as I figure it out. There used to be a saying in human services, you can't convince them, confuse them. That was an old Harry Truman statement. I found that to be true often in politics.
It's all right. You get through these things.
Good times.
Now we had that brief.
Do we figure
Would
it
you
out
like
now?
to inform?
You guys on?
In reviewing this with the clerk, it is my understanding that Mr. Brown made a motion for a vote that was seconded.
Yes.
We were into discussion and we did not have a vote. And then Mr. Brown asked for a point of order. Is that correct?
No, Mr. Heckman asked to call the
But then
vote.
you withdrew it.
No, he did not.
Mr. Heckman
withdrew his.
called the vote.
Christopher, Mr. Brown made a motion to vote. John Goffredo
That's
seconded.
correct.
We went in, oh, Mr. Giovanni, I'm sorry.
Giovanni, yep.
We went into discussion.
But we went into discussion.
there
Now,
was
if you
no
have a
vote.
vote in a second, you're not supposed to have discussion. Correct?
No,
If
that's
there's a
what- that's
vote and a
what-
second on a motion.
No,
you've
there
got
is discussion on, prior to the vote. Only on a tabling motion is there no discussion.
Okay, thank you.
So what I would suggest is to clear the air, that we vote on the ordinance as presented, and then we may go somewhere from there on a motion to table or some other motion that council may consider.
How are we going to table a vote if we vote on?
We're not tabling the vote. You're voting on them as presented.
I know, but you just said then we could table it after we vote on it. That makes absolutely no sense.
Hold
What
on.
what if it fails?
If it fails, that'd be,
What if there's an amendment by someone?
that would be hopeful.
Christopher,
So, so the motion was made. It was seconded. We went into discussion. Mr. Heckman called for a vote, which he rescinded that call for a vote. After that, I made a motion to table it. I have every right, under my understandings, to make a motion during discussion to table. We've done that before here.
I understand that, but what I'm alerted to is that Mr. Brown made a motion that was seconded by Mr. Goffredo.
Yes, and then we went into discussions, and we have tabled things in discussion. And that's when the only thing that could have stopped me was a call for a vote, and he rescinded that. Now, during discussions, I tried to table it. Now, you're telling me I can't table something during discussion?
Let me try to move this ahead. Mr. Brown, would you agree to the table motion to be voted on?
But
Just to vote on it. The vote on it as is.
So we cannot, during discussion of an ordinance, or we cannot table it during discussion anymore.
wait a minute.
But we didn't vote on the motion. There was a point of order to vote on it.
There was a call.
Now,
There was a call to vote, but Mr. Heckman rescinded that. He called for the vote, but he rescinded that.
Yep.
After that, I made a motion to table, but he rescinded it. So I made a motion to table. We have tabled things in the past during discussion.
You're starting to convince me.
Clear.
Let me say the following, There was a motion and a second on the ordinance as is. You then presented a motion to table with a second.
Correct.
I am telling you that under the Roberts Rules of Order, you should proceed with the motion to table without discussion.
Good, let's go.
Thank you.
All right, let's go.
I am
So we are voting now.
To table it.
To table the original.
Okay, so Mr. Brown's motion to vote
On the ordinance as
On
is
the
has been
ordinance.
tabled. It's subject to the vote to
is
table.
not, okay, so that's being canceled.
Sure is.
And we are now voting on a motion to table again.
Correct.
Explain what yes and no means, so everybody's clear.
A yes means you're tabling it, a no vote means you're not tabling it.
Okay. And it's only quarter after.
Okay, so now we have, hold on a second. Okay, Mr. Lott,
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
No.
Mr. Kuzic,
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni,
No.
Mr. Gofredo,
No.
Mr. Heckman,
No.
Well, we're done now.
Mr. Myers,
No.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
No.
Fails by a vote of 3 to 6.
Didn't get better.
Call for the vote on the original motion. Ordinance.
Sure, why not?
Call for the vote on the original motion.
On the original ordinance?
The original agreement. 'Cause that
Okay.
was next. Am I correct?
Mr. Brown's motion was seconded.
Yep.
As is, as presented.
As is, as presented.
Mr. Giovanni,
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo,
Yes.
Mr. Heckman,
Yes.
Mr. Lott,
No.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner,
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky,
No.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
No.
Ordinance is adopted by a vote of 6 to 3.
That was painful.
We know this is going to be vetoed. So we're going to move on, because we know this is going to be vetoed. We were already forewarned that that was going to happen. Let's move on to new business. Introduction of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance leasing Northampton County-owned real property to Robert Rope, Nazareth, Pennsylvania. I asked someone to sponsor this.
I'll second.
Who was first?
Gofredo.
Mr.
JP.
JP
Let's
and,
wait to
and
call him.
Tara was second?
Yes.
Okay. We will have a public hearing on April 20th about this. Introduction of ordinance entitled, an ordinance leasing Northampton County-owned real property to Brett DeFranco, Bangor, PA. Can I have someone sponsor this?
I'll sponsor it.
Can I have a second?
Second.
So,
I'm gonna be quiet.
can you,
Some order.
we're still having a meeting.
I know, it's hard to believe, huh? Yep. Good times.
Who sponsored it first? Mr.
I did.
And I'll second.
Tara did. Who seconded it? Mr. Giovanni.
Let's keep going.
Mr. Myers, could you call order? It's very difficult to hear.
Okay. Introduction of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance leasing Northampton County-owned property to Daniel Seipel, Bath, PA. Would someone please sponsor that?
I'll sponsor it.
Lori, you?
Tara.
Tara,
Or
who's
Lori,
second?
I don't care. But I'm Tara. Yep.
Is there a second? Lori, were you with?
It's a long night here, folks.
I'll happily second it. Let's keep moving.
Okay.
Let's go.
Introduction of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance leasing Northampton County-owned real property to Riverview Dairy, Walnutport, PA. Can I have a sponsor?
I'll sponsor that too. Let's go.
Second.
Second.
All right.
Consideration of an authorization to file a redevelopment assistance capital project grant application, business plan, resolution, Lehigh Valley Resort and Spa, Lehigh Valley Resort Spa 2. Ms. Zirinsky, please introduce the resolution.
Sure will. Now therefore be it resolved by Northampton County Council as follows. The county supports the RACP grant to Janda Land Company in the amount of $1,500,000 to be used in the Lehigh Valley Resort and Spa project. 2, the county agrees to serve as the public applicant for the grant. 3, the county authorizes the county executive to execute the grant agreement on behalf of Janda Land Company and to execute any and all documents necessary to effectuate receipt of the grant for the project. So moved, right? Let's go. We talked about this at the Economic Development Committee already, and I want to tell you, this is a beautiful piece of bucolic property that is going to grace Lehigh and Allen townships, right?
Are you done?
Mr. Chandel is here.
Are you done? Okay. We have a Part B, Lehigh Valley Resort Spa.
We have to vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Call for a vote.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman. Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Lehigh Valley Resort Spa 2, Ms. Zirinsky, introduction of resolution.
Now therefore be it resolved by Northampton County Council as follows. The county supports the grant to Jandal Land Company in the amount of $2,100,000 to be used for the Lehigh Valley Resort and Spa 2 project. The county agrees to serve as the public applicant for the grant. The county authorizes the county executive to execute the grant agreement on behalf of Jandal Land Company and to execute any and all documents necessary to effectuate receipt of the grant for the project. So moved. Again, we talked about this at the Economic Development Committee. Same piece of bucolic property.
Call for a vote.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Sure, yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo. Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Consideration and authorization of administrator for Pennsylvania Crash Information Tool Resolution. Mr. Heckman, would you read that resolution?
I don't know what it is. It's hereby resolved by Northampton County Council that Ms. Rebecca Sanchez, Community and Economic Development Specialist, is hereby authorized as administrator and directed to sign on its behalf the electronic access agreement for Pennsylvania Crash Information Tool entered into with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Thank you, John. So moved.
No discussion? Call for a vote.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-0.
Consideration of a Department of Conservation Natural Resource Grant for the Meadows Restoration at Gulf Farm Preserve, Louise Moore Park, County Park, Wayne Groove Park, Gracedale Complex. Ms. Zirinsky, would you read the resolution, please?
Sure will. Now therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Northampton County Council, one, the Northampton County Council hereby approves the Meadow Restoration and Northampton County Parks Grant application to the Pennsylvania DCNR. Further, the Northampton County Executive, through the Office of the Program Administrator of the Northampton County Livable Landscapes Program, or his/her designee, is directed to take any and all steps necessary to administer and complete Northampton County's obligations in this project. Two, the Northampton County Executive, through the Office of the Northampton County Division of Parks and Recreation, or his/her designee, is directed to take any and all steps necessary to administer and complete Northampton County's obligation in this project. Three, the signature page for the grant application and grant agreement may be signed on behalf of the applicant by the official who, at the time of signing, has the title of County Executive. Four, if this official signed the signature page for the grant application and grant agreement prior to the passage of this resolution, this grant of authority applies retroactively to the date of signing. Five, if the applicant is awarded a grant, the signature page for grant application and grant agreement signed by the above official will become the applicant/grantee's executed signature page for the grant agreement, and the applicant/grantee will be bound by the grant agreement. Six, any amendment to the grant agreement may be signed on behalf of the grantee by the official who, at the time of signing of the amendment, has the title specified in paragraph 2, and the grantee will be bound by the amendment. Thank you.
Call for a vote.
Ms.
Public comment on that?
No.
No. No public comment on that. Not even close.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Any other new business we want to discuss?
No.
Committee reports.
We had an economic development committee meeting today where we discussed the Jando property, and we also discussed, which we voted on today, we also had a presentation from Stevens Place, a great organization that helps men coming out of prison have a safe and spiritual environment to address their early recoverance from substance abuse. Murray, who gave the presentation, was really passionate and compassionate, and I'm glad that we support Stevens Place year after year, and I'm sorry Virginia could not be here, the sister Virginia, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Human Services met before the meeting. Good discussion. Graysdale handed out some packets you might want to look at. And they're doing some renovations and updates. It looks good. And we also got an update on the Northampton County Decision Aid tool that they're using in children and youth. And they just started, and we'll get an update in a few more months.
Yeah, it's going to be going on for 90 days, and then we're going to update. That's the New Zealand thing, correct? All right. No other reports? Liaison reports. I'll start with
I have
Mr.
one.
Kus- Hold up. Go ahead, Lori, since you started talking. Go ahead.
Sorry, General Purpose Authority met earlier this week. The bridge project was updated, and we are down to having 2 bridges to complete. They will be completed by the end of 2024. And I believe that all the other bridges that are left in the project are complete or have minor punch list items to amend. Other than that, we had an audit. Audit was clean, and that's all I can remember. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Cusack.
Yeah, I attended the IDA's first meeting of the year, and they endorsed the majestic Hanover Flex Center Business Park at LVIA RCAP resolution. And as well, we sat through an audit report, and it was clean as well. Thank you.
Mr. Giovanni.
I attended a farm preservation meeting via Zoom. We are now up to 18,953 acres, 249 farms. And she'll have another one by the end of this month, which will put us over to 250 at farms and 18,967 acres. There's 15 farms applied for 2023. They all get approved. We'll be over 20,000 acres, 275 farms.
Yep.
That's outstanding. You're also IT guy. For the next meeting, can you update us on what is slowing down, what's supposed to be going on in here? And have a report for us?
itself?
Yes.
I think that me and Ms. Lori Vargo have to talk about, because it's contingency. It doesn't have to go through IT.
Okay. Well, that, you can deal with that.
And Eileen will talk
Give me an
about
update at the next meeting.
Yep.
Clerk's report.
Nothing.
Council Solicitor.
Nothing.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah. Everybody agree that.
Second.
Lori, take care of yourself.
Yeah. Can I table it? Hey, can I table it, Kevin?